for participating in today's meeting with the Hive account and agreeing to the terms?
Yes, I think so.
All right.
Set it up. I didn't see my post on the terms site, but on the keychain widget, it's written that I posted. I agree, so I think it's done. It's okay.
All right. Well, welcome to the group. We have a ton to talk about today. And if you haven't checked out my blog post, I'm going to turn this off because that's what I'm in the mood for. There we go. If you haven't seen my blog post today or from earlier this week about the legal status of DAOs, I think that piece is something that we all need to consider, and that has motivated me and my team to work on a significant update to the Fractal Contributor Agreement. Same general spirit, but formalizing it a little bit more in terms of the legal framework that actually exists and how it'd probably be interpreted, just so we have a little bit more clarity. So we can talk about that a little bit more. I can answer any questions about that. But yeah, so coming down the roadmap in the month ahead or so, we would expect an update there. But the biggest thing, now that we've had 5 minutes for people to show up, the biggest thing we have today is a sneak peek at the new consensus building UI that we have in place. I've asked Josh to prepare it. The team had a lot of fun using it. Please keep in mind that this UI is not complete, that there are certain status indicators that are not present that we will be adding over the course of the next couple of weeks, and we will demo that so that you can know when you're fully in consensus. But I wanted to give you all a feel for how this would work on a mobile environment. And keep in mind that what you'll be seeing is completely decentralized, peer-to-peer, using WebRTC and web standards to facilitate the entire experience. So there is some sizable amount of work that went into that aspect of it. So as a community, we won't be dependent on Zoom. We won't be dependent upon any centralized video service provider. And that also keeps the costs down. One of the major things that we discovered is whether we're using Zoom or these other parties is that there's a cost per minute of video, and that can be sizable. So yeah. And you might notice that everyone's having fun with the background this week. That was based on a challenge last week to have fun. I'm glad to see so many people have taken the time to have some fun. So, be sure to check out what everyone's doing when you have a chance. But without further ado, let's go ahead and have Jesse cue up the video, and we'll show you what we've been up to.
All right, here we go. Just give me a thumbs up if the audio quality is good when I press play here.
All right, so guys, we have 6 minutes left to come to consensus on who has the best office. Am I stating that problem correctly here? Who has the best office?
Who's contributed the best background office experience to the other members of the group?
Yeah, this is really important, and I'm glad that we can talk about this. So, look, I just want to say that I really like my office. I have tons of natural light, and I do think that because of that, I deserve probably the rank 6 spot. Then again, I don't want look behind Gregory. First of all, look at Gregory and then look behind Gregory. I don't want him to come after me if I try. So I'm actually going to propose that Gregory's rank 6 because I'm afraid of him.
I have one concern, is that his front-facing persona doesn't match his background.
Oh.
Also, I would say
there's that inconsistency there.
The
But, you know-
background is really what's important here. So I think like the glasses and the hat might actually be a distraction for what we're really trying to reach consensus on.
Oh, a little
Oh, so we
disrespect.
should get out of the way, is what we're saying?
All right, I have to say I really appreciate the medieval theme back there. So yeah, I'm all for Gregory being number 6 on level 6 here, most valued background. That said, all things considered,
I agree.
Brandon's got a pretty good one. He's got a fireplace to create a little ambiance. So yeah,
The statement of the mission was also who has contributed, right? This is contributions in the past, and I have spent hours and hours and hours and hours in the car getting other coworkers in my background for the last few weeks. So there is that.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I'm moving you up right now in
Yeah.
my rank list, Mike.
So
'cause
more
that
of a
is-
Hey,
Past
that's your
tense.
5 minutes. That's your 5 minutes. Next.
Brandon does have kind of a fractal fireplace back there with those stones, the way that they're put together. I don't know
The
if anybody's
fireplace is
noticed
real
that.
nice.
Well, guys, look, we've got 3.5 minutes left. Obviously, pretty soon in this UI, we're going to have live indicators of the consensus that we're all coming to as we drag and drop. We don't have that here yet, so let's figure this out. All in favor of Gregory at rank 6?
I think Mike should be there.
All right, you know what? I'll agree with that. I will change my vote to Mike at rank
What?
6.
Wait! I didn't even get. Here, I got a nice backyard too.
Oh, if we're talking backyards, I can take.
Mike's giving us more variety.
I can go out to the pool, guys.
All right, so Mike, rank 6. All in favor?
All right.
Gregory, rank 5. Oh, well, sorry, Gregory. We've got 5 against you. But I will say I would throw Gregory's name out there for rank 5.
I'd agree with
I
that.
second that motion.
All right.
But how do I know what rank 6 is? Because there's no 6 on here.
It's the top. You see most valued contribution. Just slide it to the top.
Okay, but I'm just being a user. I don't know what.
Yeah. All right. So anybody for rank 4, you guys?
Dan's got a nice corporate look in the background, and I think he had like a logo or something back there. It is.
Oh
I got-
yeah,
There
Big
it
Tony
is.
T back there.
very thematic.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's cool.
But I'm gonna go with Brandon's ambiance with the fireplace back there. It's my background's a little plain most of the time. So
I'll take it.
all in favor of Brandon for level 3?
Agreed.
Awesome. Okay. So we've got Mike, Gregory, Brandon. I'll throw Dan's name out there for number 6543 spot.
I'd like to advocate for myself. I have a nice chair that you can see. The other thing that I would argue is I have a standing desk, so my background is dynamic. So
Ooh,
you can
wait,
change.
Wait a second.
Where did he go?
Yeah.
Guys,
Oh,
I'm getting
yeah.
nervous
It's
here.
highly competitive now.
We've got 1 minute and 19 seconds left. I'm getting nervous. So
Yeah.
where are we?
I think.
All
we're-
right. Let's go ahead and make James next.
All right.
We're 3. James
James.
level 3.
Yeah, the monitor
Sorry.
clinches it for me.
All right.
Dan, level 2.
All right.
And Thomas, sorry, I do like the natural light, but
Hey, if you're not first, you're last.
okay.
And the
Let's
wicker
get
chair.
this submitted.
One.
I'm gonna go ahead and submit this here. Submit rank consensus. We've got yes, Mike, Gregory, yes, all good, and we've got a few indicators mocked out here, and so the report isn't actually out of consensus. That will come into consensus and confirm we're set. Thanks all. Good meeting. 30 seconds to spare. Good work.
We did it.
We did it.
All right. Oh.
I'm glad we did it in time. Whew.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. You can tell we had a lot of fun putting that together. I'm curious, does anyone have any questions or feedback about the overall experience we put there?
So awesome. Can we use it now?
You won't be able to use it today. over the course of the next week or two, we will be making additional enhancements, getting the status indicators. So the way that's going to work is that when you're in agreement with everyone else, you'll have a solid green on each spot. When you're in disagreement with everyone else, but everyone else is in agreement, you'll have a green thing that's empty in the middle. And if there's no consensus, you'll have a caution that, hey, there's no consensus on who's there. The intention is that you, through the communication, you discuss back and forth and everyone updates their interface. And when you're done, you hit submit. It's just simple drag and drop, nothing to overload. So one of the things that we are aiming for is the ability to use that interface even before we've got the blockchain fully good to go. So the team is working on that, and we plan to have more regular updates on the status of this interface. So we went through a lot of iteration trying to ferret out the complexity, right? The initial temptation is to put all kinds of information on the screen about what everyone's thinking, and ranks and respect levels and everything else. But that really takes away from the communication collaborative, what are you actually doing? And so that's how that's going. But our plan in the weeks ahead is that groups can opt in to using this interface in the Zoom meetings. And then we'll get some feedback on how that actually works for these meetings. The bigger vision here is that we'll have the weekly meetings. You'll just show up to the website or download the app, and you're just in your meeting. You're in your group. There's nothing else you have to do. So we won't have these pre-meetings, although I think this is kind of fun, and I think people like these updates. So if certain fractals want to, they can have a scheduled Zoom call that occurs in the 45 minutes before, and then rather than going to the breakout rooms like we do now, everyone just leave this call and join the website, do their meeting with the people that are in their group, which will be randomly selected by the blockchain, and then submit their results. So it should be a really, really lightweight situation there.
Beautiful team. Good job, ƒractally. It's amazing work. Thank you for showing us a preview, and thank you for all your hard work. I can't wait to use it.
Thanks. So that group experience there is, I think, probably the most challenging of the UI elements that we have going on. All right. Are there any other just questions about the stuff that's happened this week? Or if not, we can, have any nominations for best background? Wow. Quiet audience today. The cow. Lenny liked the cow. So here we go. So well, why don't we go ahead and talk a little bit about the regulatory framework. You didn't read the blog. We highlighted the concept that whether or not you write any agreement between people or verbally express an agreement between people, common law and actual acts passed by a large number of states will recognize a group of people as an unincorporated entity. And these unincorporated entities can be either a general partnership, which would be a for-profit entity, or they will be a nonprofit association. And and there is massive differences in the liability of the parties between whether it's a for-profit or nonprofit. If you have a for-profit entity or organization, the general partners are jointly and severally liable, which means we would each be liable for what anybody else does in the name of the organization. Obviously, not what anyone here wants to be classified as. And as far as I can tell, it's almost universally agreed that it's for profit needs to be the motive of the organization. So be profit of the organization with the intention of sharing the profits among the partners. But we've been doing a lot of focus on public goods, decentralization being a public good, and the like. So I really believe that what we're doing here is actually nonprofit in its structure and its purpose. And that by clearly getting in the realm of, hey, we're a bunch of people organized and associating, like we're an association of people organized for a common purpose of spreading awareness and adoption of fractal governance for the betterment of society. And even if you're any of these other situations, it's just people coming together to talk so that we can share information and reach consensus about things. So we want to carefully establish the nonprofit purpose. The other benefit that we get from a nonprofit purpose is much harder to be considered a security if there's no profit at the center of the organization. If the center of the organization is communication and freedom of thought, in consensus building, those things do not, in my opinion, create a security. I guess I need to get this disclaimer out of the way. I probably should have done this at the very start. I'm not a lawyer. I wrote that in my blog post. I spent a lot of time talking to a lot of lawyers. I'm very rational, but I am not a lawyer. And there are a million jurisdictions out there, so it's different in every single one of them. But I've stated since the beginning that a DAO or a fractal is an organization or a group of people, a thing that cannot own property. That Bitcoin was the first DAO because it could not own property. Not being able to own property means that it actually is decentralized, because the only thing that exists in the DAO is the information that people publish, right? The DAO is nothing but the collection of signed messages broadcast by the people, and the people in the DAO are free to fork it, which means each individual at any and all times is able to change the software that they use to interpret the world. So there's no property there, there's no common assets, and a DAO cannot contract with third parties as an entity. So you can't create any contractual rights. So my general proposal is that we formally update our contributor agreement to actually be an official, unincorporated, nonprofit association that picks a particular jurisdiction, and I'm proposing Texas, and the Uniform Nonprofit Association Act is sort of what would be governing the association. And by doing so, what we all gain the benefit from is anyone who participates in setting the policy or selecting the leaders of the organization, basically everyone who participates on these calls, would be a member and potentially liable. But under the nonprofit association, we all would have liability protection from the association's perspective. General partnership, that would be really bad classification, and we're really trying to do everything we can to make sure it's clear that that's not our intention, both internally and to anyone who does business with us. The existing fractal contributor agreement, I think it already is like very, very good and sets a very solid foundation of all these principles. We'd just be formalizing it, explicitly opting into particular situations. one of the really, really cool things about the Nonprofit Association Act is you don't actually have to file any paperwork with any government anywhere. And you get all this. So by having everyone agree explicitly that's what we are, we all agree that this association will not own property and that no one here can contract in the name of the association or represent the association unless it's actually possible to have us agree to appoint someone to be a registered agent to receive official communications in the event someone wanted to sue the association. However, there's nothing to sue if it has no property. There's no assets to go after, so no lawsuit is even likely in that situation. So that's where I'm leaning. In the past, I've been against things like Wyoming DAOs or Wyoming DAO laws because you have to go get their permission and it's this structured thing. And now you're an LLC and there's all these other requirements it puts on there. But the unincorporated nonprofit association does not require any government approval to form. Yes, we got Matt's asked a question.
Does this impact each member's anonymity? So I've chosen to be non-anonymous. You've chosen to be non-anonymous. What does that mean in general for members of the Fractal under this this structure that you're talking about?
Well, that's a very good question. I think fundamentally, we are all signing an agreement. We all have cryptographic evidence that we've signed an agreement. And if there was to be a lawsuit, you'd have to give up your anonymity at that point and prove that you signed the agreement at that time. So I don't think it changes anything about the anonymous nature of things or the pseudo-anonymous nature, given everyone's on camera and our faces are shown. And government databases may or may not be able to tie that to your driver's license and passport. But that's, I don't think it impacts that at all. You don't have to sign anything with your legal name because to establish a contract, a recording or a bunch of witnesses that saw you on a Zoom call agree to the terms, cryptographic evidence on a blockchain where you agree to the terms, that establishes, I guess, in my opinion, much stronger proof of a signature than is typically accepted, considering it's possible to form one of these associations without explicitly saying anything. Just by the way you're acting with other people, you can form one of these things. So I think we've got far better and far clearer understanding of who is and who isn't a member based on how we're allocating the respect tokens. So any other questions about this course of action or concerns about going this course of action?
I have a quick question. I'm curious if there are, you mentioned that just by the way that we're acting, we can sort of start one of these nonprofits. What exactly way of acting is that? Is that essentially everything that's covered in the ƒractally contributor agreement is?
Let's say you and some friends get together to host a bake sale to raise money for charity. You've created one of these just by getting together and having a bake sale, even if there's no anything. So there's millions of these existing in small groups, large groups. Anytime you organize for a common cause, you have a meetup to have your hiking club or whatever, right? Meetup.com. Every single thing going on at meetup.com could potentially classify as one of these entities. Now, normally these entities don't get sued and anything like that, but we're operating at a larger scale with more people in a blockchain industry. And so the more people involved, the more ambiguous things. You got tokens. What are these tokens? Are they property? Are they a security? What is it that we're doing with this? No, it's just the community's sign of respect, consensus opinion. And so it's the ambiguity that allows the regulators and or people that might want to sue anyone room to propose their interpretation of what things are. And so by having everyone explicitly agree, you remove the ability for them to interpret things in the least favorable way for the other parties. So yeah, these happen all the time. This is like not something new. The only thing that's new is it's large scale and it's potentially international. And it's involving technology like blockchain that allows us to do things together based entirely on nothing but reputation and consensus opinion that was previously not really viable for most of these associations. But because there's more at stake, there's more opportunity for people to intentionally misinterpret things. Keep in mind that people will intentionally misunderstand things if it benefits them.
Cool. Thanks. That clears it up.
Now, I've got to acknowledge Gregory. Gregory's the one that did a lot of the legwork, who brought the Nonprofit Association Act to my attention. And that just was like light bulbs going off when I started reading that and realized that's the default, and realizing that it gives us all limited protection. I think it's huge. I think it separates what we consider a DAO from what other people consider a DAO, right? Some people say a DAO is anything that is a, it's 11 o'clock. So I guess people are starting to join for the main meeting.
Go ahead, Dan. Continue
Yeah.
your thought.
Yeah, so I'm trying to recapture my thought. Any organization that uses a blockchain as a ledger is what some people consider a DAO. And if you have a DAO that's managing property for the purposes of profit, then you probably have a general partnership. You might have seen a Twitter poll I put out there of, is Ethereum property or an opinion? And 2/3 of the people said Ethereum tokens were property. Well, under that theory that Ethereum tokens are property, and under the theory that smart contracts are contracts among parties, then almost everything on Ethereum is a general partnership under that theory of what's going on. And so people are acting as if it's property, that they treat it as theft. They are, so to the extent that a smart contract has any management or any governance properties, right? So if it's token weighted voting on something, all right, all those people are the general partners. If there's only, like say the devs are the ones that are able to update the smart contract, the devs are the general partners. Now, they might be, as managers, not making any profit, in which case they could claim that they're nonprofit, and therefore, even though they've got property that's being managed by it, that profit's going to people who have no power, right? So you're running a market maker, but you're not profiting from the running of the market maker. You're just maintaining the code. That might be a nonprofit association managing things that allows other parties, right? One of the things the acts clarify is that simply sharing in the profits does not make you a partner. What makes you a partner is having any degree of influence over the management and direction of the association. So that's why I'm presenting this potentially controversial take on what crypto tokens are, as they're the non-binding opinions that a lot of people happen to share and nothing more, and that no individual owns them. Just like I don't own what you think, you don't own what I think. And any software that we use merely helps inform us as to what we might want to think based upon all the information that's out there. It's like we're wearing smart glasses that give us information about the world. We're still the ones that choose what glasses to wear and what meaning or value we ascribe to things. So I'm presenting that just because it helps set the framework. Now, one of the things that people say, well, if it's not property, then why does it have any value? Well, your respect and standing in a community is tremendously valuable. And if a community is not arbitrary in how it's changing its opinions, and you've got a group of people that are reliable and predictable and fair and all these other things, then it can have a lot of the social benefits of property without being property, without being a right, without being an obligation, which would then make it subject to government laws, security laws, lawsuits, and all that other stuff that comes when you start involving property. Realizing that the concept of property is really just a consensus opinion of the government and the government's interpreting of contracts between people. So yes, Joshua's got a question.
I just want to bring in a couple from the chat here. So one of them is why Texas?
Well, Texas is one of the 20 or so states that have adopted it. And I happen to be in Texas. So I'm selfishly choosing the jurisdiction I'm already exposed to. But in general, it shouldn't really matter as long as it's one of the states that has that officially recognized. And if you recognize in one of the states, even if people are not in that state, they'll really bias the way other states will interpret the situation. So if there's any preference for a different state for a certain reason, let me know. I happen to like Texas because I think it's a little bit more independent than most states.
I think the blog post answers these two questions, but I'm just going to answer them anyway. Maybe you can give a short summary. So the question is, who will file papers to register the association? Who will pay fees? What is the purpose of having a legal entity at all?
Well, first of all, as I said earlier, you don't have to file any paperwork at all. And even if you don't file any paperwork and you don't have any contract among the parties, an entity still exists. Its terms are just ambiguous. And those ambiguous terms can be used against you. So it's better to define things as we intend to minimize liability. And I'm not advocating any paperwork be filed with any government. In the event the association wants to register, the register would be basically picking a registered agent, which would be one of our members who would have to agree. They have to agree. The law requires them to agree. And then they would pay a $25 fee to be a registered agent. And the only role that person has is to receive notice of lawsuits against the association and distribute it to the members. So it's really not even a need to register anything. There'd be no trademark, intellectual property, or copyright, or any other property owned by the association, because that's what we would explicitly agree to. Now, suppose we did not have these agreements and did not have this. People might say, well, this logo is owned by the association, or something you did is now the property of all of us. And then lawsuits and stuff could crop up. But by having this agreement, we formalize the structure, we formalize our relationship to each other in a way that basically prevents any of us from suing each other over our opinions that we publish through blockchains. And that's really, I think, what we're largely wanting to go after. And so, yeah. So why any legal entity at all? Well, because we already have one. It's already recognized. We're just cleaning it up.
Yeah, really good points. One more question. I don't know really how fully we can answer this, but the question is, how does this affect people outside the US?
Well, common law is typically what's outside the US. I don't think it impacts you at all. But I can't provide legal advice on that. But if you're part of an association, a nonprofit association that happens to choose United States law and you have a dispute in another country, typically they will attempt to enforce the contractual arrangements and recognize that entity as the intent of the parties. So I think common law is favorable, particularly when you particularly opt into a broader jurisdiction under a established act adopted by 20 plus states, and many others are considering it.
All right, in about 5 minutes, we're going to go into our breakout rooms unless we want to go in early today. I've posted the link to the blog post that we're going to be using. There's also a link to the agenda, specifically if you're new, you could check out the section in the breakout rooms, or if you've been here for a while, just kind of familiarize yourself with what we're supposed to do in the breakout rooms. I do want to mention that in order to be participating, you have to be a member of the Fractal, which means you need to have a Hive user account. And with that same account, you need to sign the Fractal contributor agreement. So if you haven't done that, you maybe don't want to participate today would be our suggestion. And if you do participate, it's going to be assumed, and the meeting is recorded and the blog post is recorded, it's going to be assumed that you are signing that agreement. So just be familiar with that and maybe jump off the call now if you haven't read the agreement and don't know that you agree to it or not.
Yeah. And after this breakout call, we're going to play a 5-minute video recorded showing the interface for everyone who didn't show up for the pre-meeting and you want to see what our team has been working on. We will play that video again for everyone. Cruz?
Yes, I have a question regarding association.
Yep.
And may an association issue notes and allow members to exchange these notes inside the association for exchange of goods?
So the way I'm attempting to structure it is the association does not issue anything that would be a contract that would create property or obligations between the association and the members, and the intent is to explicitly avoid that. Can the association, what we're basically saying is that we're all going to publish our opinions, signed messages, and we're going to distribute and share those signed messages, and we're all going to run software that's going to allow us to come to the same view of whatever conclusion we're going to draw. And that software could have representations of respect, like token balances and whatnot, and that can be transferred. And if someone pays you to transfer it, they can pay you to sign a message. And doing so is fine. They're not buying the tokens, they're paying you to sign the message that is broadcast. It's more like an influencer. How much will they pay you? Well, the approximate value of having those tokens in their name instead of your name, and how that impacts their perception in the community. So everything that we want to do with smart consensus systems, I'm trying to avoid the use of the word smart contract going forward, primarily because it implies a contract and the code as evidence of the contract. And I want to make sure that any code that we're using to interpret the events that are going on is just informing people's opinions and informing the consensus state, not being used as evidence of a contract. And I think that protects everyone. Parties can still contract outside here. You could still create a company, have shares in a company, track the shares of that company on the blockchain being used as a information source that helps you interpret, but the contract is actually the separate thing you have outside between those parties. The security, if it is a security, is that separate thing, that separate document, the subscription agreement. That is the security. The blockchain state is just information that we are all distributing and sharing. And we are down to like 2 minutes. So if there's a long question, we can save it for afterward. But Patrick, you have a question?
I have a question and also a confirmation of you, Dan. You said always focus on the IDs, not on the people. IDs are bulletproof. Without consensus on information, no DAC. And we don't speak of DAO, DAC. And you said a DAC has no assets. Sorry. No assets that can be sized. No laws it is subject to, just consensus over forkable information. So now with this organization that you are doing to protect us, I understand that, is still possible to go with this concept of DAC where no assets can be seized, no laws it is subject to. It is all here preserved with what you have stated, or
everything that I've presented here is consistent with the philosophy of decentralized autonomous collaboration. Is another way of saying it.
Yes.
Yeah, but when you throw words like company or organization in there, these acronyms help us in some ways, but they can also hurt us. But I think that by formally saying that we are a unincorporated nonprofit association, we're bringing nonprofit into the name. We're an association of people, which is freedom of association versus say that, and it's unincorporated. All those things describe it, but it's time to do our breakout rooms.
Yes.
Time to go.
Thank you.
All right, we'll discuss more in the post meeting when we come back. Everybody have fun, and the rooms are now open.
Hi, Dan. Hi, James. Hi, Eric.
Hey, guys.
Hey, everyone. Good to see you, Thomas, James, and Eric.
I gotta mute my microphone while I'm chewing, but somebody remind me if I forget.
Okay,
no problem.
Yeah, it's fine by me.
Good. All right. We're 5.
I love the in the sample preview video for the interface, and I thought that your room was quite good, Thomas, so I might have ranked you a bit higher. And James, I didn't know you had the raising desk before either. I have one as well, and it's super helpful.
Dynamic background.
Yeah. That would have weighed heavily in my decision there.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool feature.
Yes.
All right, I guess we're a group of 5 today.
Looks like it. I guess, yeah.
Hey, Marco.
Hey, guys. There's a guy doing some construction, so I'm going to keep it on mute unless I'm talking.
Okay.
I love that we all kind of know each other. I know all of your faces in this room, and it's just, yeah, it's cool. We're kind of getting to know each other.
Eric, I had don't think we've met, or maybe we have met, but maybe in Eden or someplace. You look familiar, but I don't know if we've ever had a chance to be in a meeting together. Yeah. Very cool. Well, it looks like we're all here. If anyone would like to go first, or I'd be happy to choose someone to go first, and or unless you guys would like to do a little bit of preamble, but I guess the best way for us to get to know each other is find out what we've been up to, and maybe we'll give each other 3 minutes, and then you have more to say than that, then we'll just open it up and start adding after we're all done. How's that sound?
That sounds good to me. And one thing I wanted to say first too is that I am recording and planning to share it on social media at some point.
Well, thank you, Dan. Appreciate that.
Cool.
Yep. Sounds good.
I'm gonna be a little timekeeper. I'm gonna try to remember to start a 3-minute timer when people start talking, and then as we get down to 1 minute, when there's 1 minute left, I'm gonna put this emoji up. Can you guys see that on my video?
Yes.
So it'll clock So keep an eye out for that. That means you have 1 minute left if we want to stick to a 3-minute timer, and we don't have to. We're not going to cut you off at 3 minutes, but you know.
And if everybody could rename themselves with their Hive login, so we can
Recall.
get the spelling and everything right for that.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
I feel like we're continuing getting some potential hints of the interface, although some of this won't be necessary. But like some like the thing that James mentioned with the timer, I could see that being helpful in the actual interface, maybe if it's not too cluttered.
Actually,
right,
I think we'll be looking for. Go ahead. I'll
Oh, no.
After we'll talk about the UI after. So go ahead.
Okay. Cool.
Dan, would you like to go first, or who wants to go first?
I'm happy to go first. Should I, or would anybody like to go before me? Either way works.
Go for it, Dan.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. So, yep, I am. I'm Dan Singh Joe. I think I met everybody here. Although Eric, I don't know if we've spoken much, but I've been following you and very much appreciate your work. And also, I enjoyed being in your background last time too. So, yep, I have a bit of a presentation here about what I'm doing to help ƒractally. I was ranked. I was ranked 6th last week. So a few different things. One, I've been working to promote ƒractally on EOS with the Eden Fractal. You can check out edenfractal.com. We're meeting every Wednesday at 13 UTC. And so this week we distributed the rankings. I've been managing the social media account for this. So just putting out tweets and doing a lot of the kind of accounting and background work, or just like lots of details there, and then sharing the tweets to help promote it. And then I also recorded the meetings. It was a great meeting. There was like 16 participants. And then I also promoted ƒractally at this meeting during my presentation, and then I encourage everybody to join this ƒractally Genesis meeting at the end of it. I remember Dan was saying how it'd be great if people from other fractals could join. I completely agree. I also did some other work just with like marketing, which I feel like is also very relevant here for promoting Eden Fractal for EOS and also promoting the concepts behind ƒractally in general. And so I just kind of started up a new channel there and just posted some of the promotional work that we've been doing there to help spread ƒractally. I've also been working with Eden creators to create amazing content, help everyone cooperate ƒractally and make the best experience possible. And this week I've been working a bit on, or quite a bit, but I haven't finished it, Fractal tutorials to show how to do these presentations. So I've been working on this for a few weeks, and there's a text outline here of how to do it, but I've also been working on a video kind of outline that I'm putting together as well. And then that's not there, but hopefully this week I'll be able to do it. I also participated in the Alien Worlds Fractal this week that Dwayne Filippi is hosting, and I help promote that in a few places. Alien Worlds Fractal, I think, is a really helpful way to grow ƒractally. It's the largest blockchain game in the world with, I think, over 150,000 players, and it's really exciting thinking about how it can work with like the cool visuals and stuff that Shakruz are saying, and like fun visuals that we were doing today. So it's been amazing networking with people and meeting people there. I also recorded that, I posted it unlisted, and then I also promoted ƒractally there and encouraged everybody to join. And then I also attended the Intro to Alien Worlds to learn more about it, because I don't really know much about the game. So Dwayne hosted that, which is really helpful as well, so I could be more prepared. And then also at the ƒractally after party last week, I spoke about this for a while with Dwayne and recorded that so we can learn these lessons for future Fractal founders. And then I also briefly promoted the Eden Fractal and ƒractally on the EOS Hot Sauce, and then I'm almost out of time. And I also spoke on the Helios Twitter Spaces, and I spoke about the Alien Worlds Fractal and ƒractally for like 20 minutes or so. They're a big venture capitalist firm in EOSIO. And then I also just read and retweeted a lot of the articles, like the one that Dan was talking about there, and did a lot of research and thinking, and also read and replied to Jorge's post about that. And that's everything. Hope that wasn't too much time. Thank you.
You said, and that's everything, as the timer hit 0. So perfect.
There we go. Just as planned.
Perfect.
Nice, Dan.
Thank you.
All right, who do you pick next?
If anybody wants to go, then feel free. But otherwise, I suppose I'll pick James.
Cool. I am happy to go.
I'll track your time for you, James.
You got it? All right.
Give me one second.
I got it, Thomas. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Or you can do it too. I just also have the timer in front of me.
All right, it's all yours.
All right. Yeah, I'm James Mart. Like I said, I'm happy to say I at least know all your faces here. Eric, I think we've interacted a little less, but I know I've definitely met you before. Yeah, I work on the ƒractally team. Last week I ranked my contributions were judged to be level 5. Yeah, so I'm on the ƒractally team. Quick overview of the ƒractally team, just because, especially with the demo that was given today, this just might be helpful for people. We have a lot of things going on in parallel. So we have legal work, like with what Dan's blog post that came out, and that's Dan and Gregory and some others in the company are working on like the legal side of things. We have a lot of front end work, and that's what Thomas and Val and Brandon and Mike Manfredi and John Williamson and others. We have back end work with me and Todd and Steven and Dan and Mike Manfredi. And then there's also educational efforts with writing blog posts. I'm actually 3 blogs. I have 3 educational posts that I've written that are like queued up basically, and we're getting ready to post them on the ƒractally blog, but they're already written. 2 of those I completed in this last week in addition to my regular work. So my regular work is, as I said, the back end stuff. So I worked 40 hours this week on the blockchain side of things, writing system smart contracts and also writing some infrastructure around front end development, or developing the front ends for smart contracts. And we have some exciting innovations around that that we will announce at some point, hopefully soon. And that's it. That's what I've been working on.
2 minutes.
Yep. And I'm finished, so I'll just kick it off to Eric. You want to go next?
All right. I always try and look at myself in 3 areas. First of all,
Hey.
What can I learn to make myself a better asset? What can I share with other people? What can I actually do? So my learning, this is only, I think, my 5th week. So I started by reading More Equal Animals 3 times, did that, then read the ƒractally white paper 3 times. This time, I focused on the legal status of DAO quote, or DAO blog, and then I'm also did the intro to Alien Worlds. I cheat a bit because I worked for Alien Worlds for several months. So there you go. By the way, you can get this app just as it's a Zoom app that anybody can do. By the way,
That timer, you mean?
Sharing. So I try and share with 4 people each time with the More Equal Animals. For those, I try and follow up with them and move them onto the Go ƒractally white paper, and those I try and actually move to on Byte. So if I've done 18, and then I did 2 more, and I moved 2 more to the Go ƒractally. I also am working on a podcast, Building the Metaverse, and so Josh queued me up to a podcast DAO for that. So I started working with that. The guest I've done for here, I've got an episode scheduled with Dwayne Phillips, Amy Hines, Josh Seymour, and now I'm working on getting one to Dan to talk about the legal status to see if he'll go for that. I also did a test of our studio this week, so lights, camera, sound, all that equipment in our podcast studio to do that. As far as doing, I'm trying to find a real property to do. So we went and looked at Mexico, and then we narrowed down some properties. We started to have this last week. We got actually agreement with a factory to put a factory there to build houses and provide income. For that, the idea is let's create a physical and then match it with a virtual. I also then got the team that's building that, and I've slowly been bringing around for Fractal. Those were the 2 people this week that I moved to Go ƒractally white paper. I also started talking to Josh Seymour this week about land DAOs as a possible way to integrate with that team. And then finally, in order to maybe turn this into a Fractal itself in the future, I've been working with Dwayne on the Alien Worlds Fractal. And that's what I have. Last week I was rated 4.
How many team members in your
Nice.
World Fractal? You've got 15 seconds.
What is the team like?
Yeah, how many people do you have in the
We've worked from 2 rooms the first time. This was only a second work. So now we're at 3 rooms breakouts. So we're at three Three breakout organization.
Yeah,
Awesome.
although the rooms were smaller when we did, and this is something that came up because we had, I think, 13 people participating at this one, and so the thing that James brought up in the Eden Fractal Discord about the not being sure if we could do 4 people, we just decided to do 4 people in each group and then 5. But yeah, generally there's been like somewhere around 13 or a dozen people participating in the first 2 meetings so far.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah,
All right,
you're
Eric,
welcome,
you should go next.
Marco, go for it. After you unmute, of course.
Sorry if you guys can hear me, right? You guys can start making some noise again. Well, I missed last week. I attended the Eden Ƒractally. I include a section in the US Weekly newsletter on Ƒractally. I've been doing so since before Ƒractally was doing a meeting, so you'd see it come together there. I sometimes post to Hive. I'm thinking of doing that more often. May even move US Weekly over there as it transitions into something else. And I thought that was kind of important because we're using Hive accounts, but nobody's used the network. And just leisure discussions. Oh, there are invitations to join the white paper discussion in those little bits in the newsletter. And Thomas, your turn.
Marco, was that the end? I think I missed the last thing you said. Okay, cool. All right, nice. And then Thomas.
I work with a Ƒractally team, and I'm there with James. We haven't been working together this past week, but I work together with Brandon and Mike and Dan. And what I've been doing for Ƒractally, let me just begin with last week I couldn't join because I was flying. I was traveling, so I couldn't be in the group. But the week before, I was ranked number 6, and so this past couple of weeks I've been working on the UI, and I think you guys saw a demo of it, working out the responsive layouts for desktop and mobile web, such that it will all lock in and won't scroll in weird ways, and have a very simple methodology for indicating when everybody's in consensus, when they're out of consensus. And the past week I updated the entire design system so that we can start having all of the other designs, which will include tables and graphs and a lot of other things, information that will show weekly what somebody's rank was, so you can actually hit their picture, see what their rank was over the past 8 to 10 weeks on a scale or on a chart and graph, and get a little bit of information about their bios and things like that. Those are designed in. I started working on and completed a lot of dark mode components, so we can have a light and dark mode in the UI. Cleaned up a lot of broken things as a result of moving to the new system, and updated, how the tabs will work and badges, and there's hundreds of little components, and getting them all to work together. So basically have a strong design system and a design flow for a lot of the UI, and then I combine them into responsive layouts so we can see how they operate before they go into development, to speed things along, so we don't have to do it more than once. So yeah, I guess mostly been working with Brandon and Mike and Dan. And I guess, last week, 2 weeks ago, I invited somebody, Linus, who's joined us. He has a legal background. So he has a legal, business, and software development background. He couldn't join us this week, but he is very interested in Fractally. So I've got a new person who's joined Fractally. So very successful invite. He runs hackathons, and he also runs some multi-thousand person user groups. So we're looking of developers. So I'm looking to expand through him into these larger groups of people in Southern California, like in the Orange County area, Irvine. So that's been it for me.
Perfect timing.
All right, awesome. Thanks, James.
By the way, I have some very unique hackathon-like experience. So if anyone's interested in talking hackathons, a unique spin on those.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that, actually. I'll put you in touch with Linus too.
I have a couple questions for people before we go into the rankings. Okay, so Eric, I have a couple questions for you. Did you say you invited 2 people to our Fractal this last week, or did I misunderstand?
No, I invited 1 to the Fractal. I invited 2 to the Go Fractally. So I move them from More Equal Animals, and then I follow up, and if they like that, then I say, let me share the Go Fractally white paper with them. And if they respond to that, then I say, hey, you ought to participate. So
nice funnel.
Out of that stack, I moved 1 from More Equal Animals to Go Fractally in there, and I moved 2 additional ones to from More Equal Animals to the Go Fractally.
And when you say Go Fractally, you mean read the white paper?
Yep, I share the white paper with them. So I do More Equal Animals. I follow up, see if they want to have a discussion. If they do, then I move them to the Go Fractally white paper. And if they like that, I say, sorry, marketing guy. I think in terms of marketing.
Yeah, that's a. Thank you for that. That cleared that up for me. And then, actually, I think that's my only question. Does anyone else have other questions, clarifications?
I just had a quick question for Eric as well. You said you read it for the 3rd time, and you read the white paper for the 3rd time, both More Equal Animals and Fractally white paper this week?
No,
Okay.
I did that prior to the following week. So that since I started, I did the More Equal Animals 3 times. Then I moved myself to the Go Fractally, and this week I went to the legal status of DAOs.
Okay.
So that's what I go at reading 3 times through is the legal status of DAOs.
And then I have one more question for you, Eric. I just remembered for the podcast. Did you actually already record all those episodes, or you just have a list of people?
Right now we're shooting for August, and so I'm putting 10 episodes into the pipeline. So I'm doing episode planning and getting buy-in by 10. Then I plan to do at least 4 and hopefully 8, so that I can drop 1 a week to do that.
Yeah.
So this week, in terms of doing that, I actually met with Josh Seymour. So I try and meet with 1 person a week to talk about an episode that we can do. So Josh and I spent about 2 hours talking about an episode, and then we talked about possible placement for Dan, and he gave me Gregory's email and say follow up with Gregory and invite Dan to talk about the legal status of DAOs on a podcast. This podcast is associated with a university, so it's got credibility. And then I tested the podcast room with lights, cameras, full dress rehearsal, so that I know who to record and fit into the editing software.
Awesome. All right. Any other questions or clarifications? Cool. The strategy we've been using in the groups I've been a part of is to all try to post the rank 6 kind of at the same time in the chat, and then if there's mismatch, we talk about it. Then we'll go through the rankings. Does anyone have an objection to that strategy?
That's perfect. And by the way, this is how I'm trying to find a good model. I'm a university professor too. We use rubrics. So when I listen to you, I'm taking notes here, but I write down what's going to have immediate impact, what's sharing this, and who's working on things which may not have immediate impact but have potential future value, because if you don't put the future in there, it never happens. So companies do that with valid scorecard. The ones that succeed really focus on the future. Just letting you know that's what I'm trying to do, but I'm open to anybody's idea on how to judge.
I definitely like that. I tend to go ahead, Thomas.
Yeah, I get that you're building a foundation for with a funnel and a process ongoing, and I really look forward to seeing the results that come through for Practically. But it sounds very promising and awesome what you're doing. So thanks for sharing that, and thanks for your contributions. Those are really very valuable.
All right. Dan, were you gonna say something? Should we go on to the ranking?
Yeah, I was going to add on to that and say thank you to Eric and thank you for everybody for the contributions. I'm not like you should have had to rank everybody, but I really appreciate everybody's contributions. So I just wanted to.
I too.
I just want to say that it's all awesome, and also like James was saying before too. It's great that we all like get to know each other, and it's amazing to see that everybody's contributing so much, both in this group and the larger group too. So yeah, I'm just really grateful to be here and thankful for everybody.
Cool. All right. If everybody could write the name of the person whose contributions you believe should be at level 6. And thank you, Eric, for putting that in the chat. That's a good idea to break up the rankings with the. All right. And 3, 2, 1. All right. 2 for Thomas and 2 for James and 1 for Dan. Oh, and there's only 5 people. Okay, so I'd like to make a case for Thomas. The finishing of the UI in this last week is something that has really immediate and tangible impact, not only for our fractal, but for others who can see the direction that we're going. And I tend to pretty heavily discount things that are only beneficial to the future, which is where I classify my own work in. So even as I obviously value the work I'm doing, and I think it's important, and it is not ready yet. And so for that reason, I would value Thomas's over my own. And then I hope that the community values my work a lot, especially when it's live.
That's the same reasoning I did for Thomas. Well, I probably weight the future a little higher than you do. The stuff Thomas is gonna, that could start working next week or this month, or that could have a real value, not only for us using it, but the ability to share it. That's what people see.
So do we have? I see Marco changed to Thomas, and actually that's 3 out of 5. So I think
I'll accept that. Voted for myself.
If I could say something too, I'm happy to vote for Thomas as well. And also, Marco, would you mind muting it when you're not speaking, because it is kind of loud with the background noise. But yeah, part of the reason too. So if we already reach a consensus on Thomas, that's totally cool. I think that both James and Thomas are both doing incredibly helpful work. A big part of my decision to vote for James was simply just looking at the total amount of respect and rankings overall, which I don't know if it's exactly how we should rank it, because I mean, we talk about how we should rank contributions, and it's very difficult for me to parse which contributions are more valuable in this circumstance, although the stuff that the points that James made make sense here. But another thing that I think might be like helpful criteria to keep in mind is just like I don't know, kind of including the contributions, but just trying to get like the optimal respect distribution as well. And like the fact that James has something like 45 less respect than Thomas, I mean, it's not a huge difference, but that was kind of part of it too. I think that James has done incredibly helpful work for Ƒractally, of course, over the past 18 weeks, and then James was also really helpful in starting the second fractal with the Eden fractal. So I'm happy to go with Thomas, but that was also some of my logic for ranking James. And if we don't rank James 6, then I would advocate for ranking James number 5.
So we are in consensus on level 6. Thomas?
I think so. And I guess we can rank level 5 if you guys are ready to go forward.
I think so. Thank you, Dan. That's actually I think looking for an overall good distribution is definitely worthwhile.
Thank you for all the information. I've not been tracking respect at all. So
yeah, that's just something that I noticed that Felix has been doing Felix Ruiz. He does at the beginning of each meeting. He does a screenshot of each, and then he shares it in the Zoom chat. I haven't really figured out how to do that. I have to I guess just do the file, but that might be helpful. I think that'd be very helpful. I was glad to see when you said the user interface you're planning on having, where you can select the last 10 ranks or whatever. And I would suggest even further back than that as well might be helpful as well, because I feel like that's a helpful thing to be able to consider while you're in the meetings.
All right, I'm always looking for ideas. So if you have any, please shoot them my way. I'd love to know what you guys are thinking. So with that, would you guys like to move on to, or I'll hand it back to James, and you can lead us in the next step for level 5.
All right, everyone write the names in the chat. Give me a thumbs up when you are done. Okay, just post it. So people started going. All right.
Looks like 1, 2, 3 for James, 1 for Dan.
All right, cool.
4 for James. So it looks like Thomas and James. We have consensus on that?
Yep. Mm-hmm. All right, and then level 4. 3, 2, 1. All right. Yeah, I think we have consensus.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'd also like to say here too, kind of with the same kind of, I guess not argument sounds too argumentative, but same reasoning, that I think Eric is doing super helpful work. Eric is newer to the community, but I think that he's bringing a tremendous amount of value, and I'm also excited to see what kind of value he'll bring. And I have quite a bit of respect. I'm one of the people with the most respect right now, so I'd be happy to rank Eric higher than me. I'm happy to accept this ranking too as well, but I figure that that we might want to consider ranking Eric above me, because that might be helpful as well.
Well, the only people that would know the difference between the value of what you two are contributing is the two of you. So that's up to you two to decide.
My argument for ranking Dan's contributions higher than Eric's for now is that it's really the same reason I would rank Thomas's above my own, which is the immediacy of the impact. Dan, you're participating in 3 different fractals, and you're a very public, vocal supporter of what we're doing, and that has immediate impact on raising awareness, which is one of the core things. So Eric, those podcasts in particular, I'm pretty pumped about. So I'm very excited for that, and I think that as soon as these things are going live and some of your other efforts you have are going live, I will then I would reconsider. But in this case, I think it makes sense just based on the
sense to me.
Cool.
I agree too, because I'm looking at this thing, so I have some immediate things that Dan's doing with the content creation, which, by the way, if anybody hasn't done content creation, that's much harder and cooler and more impactful than you'd imagine. So that's what got it for me, is the content creation. Then the shares are big, but again, he's also thinking about the future. So I think Dan is pretty evenly distributed in those 3 areas of immediate sharing and future work.
Perfect.
Okay, cool. Well, sounds good. Thank you. And yeah, I'm happy to help, and that works for me.
All right.
All right, guys.
All right, level 3. 3, 2, 1.
All right.
Yeah, looks like we have consensus, and then that also means you have consensus on the level 2 as well, which is Marco. I will just say something real quick, which is that Marco's writing a weekly newsletter, which I've read, and it's really good. And it's, I think, a testament to the effort that this entire community is putting in, that somebody who writes a weekly newsletter is that contribution ends up getting out competed by the other contributions in a group, because that's a great contribution. So, Marco, I really appreciate your writing, and I do hope that you continue.
Can you share a
and
link here?
get
Can you
level
share a
2
link to
this
that,
week.
by the way? Yeah, Marco could share a link to that. Be great. I'm sorry, James. I overspoke what you were saying.
No, not at all.
It's EOS Weekly. If you're not familiar, it's on the crypto website, but I think they have linked it to that.
So did I get that right and everybody's spelled right?
Good call. Everyone double check the chat to make sure your Hive name is spelled correctly.
And that I got the right order?
Yeah, looks good to me.
Yeah, it looks correct as well. I was also going to add to one. Marco just shared the crypto writer link, and I shared a link to post recently from Marco's Twitter. And yeah, just kind of echoing what James said a bit, I guess. I really appreciate Marco's newsletters, and then also participation in all these events too, in the Eden Fractal as well. Marco's been there like the whole time and been very helpful starting there. It also was a bit difficult to hear you, Marco, too. So I don't know if I caught everything as you're speaking with the background noise. So I appreciate you mentioning that. But in the future, if you're able to somehow get in an environment where it's easier to hear you, that might be helpful.
And the guy is a professional contractor, so every month or so he does some motivation on the weekend. But I would really like to get invited to the ƒractally Alien Worlds thing, if at all possible.
Sounds great. Yeah, that's invited to everybody, and I'll share a link with you. It's every Thursday at 16 UTC.
Awesome.
Yeah, and then there's also, if you're interested, Dwayne is hosting a introduction to Alien Worlds for people who aren't very familiar to learn about Alien Worlds every Monday at 16 UTC.
I'll check it out, but I have an account.
It's also on YouTube. They recorded the last Mondays, which is pretty good.
That's correct. And you also don't need to. You also don't need to really follow Alien Worlds to attend. You can just join just to learn about it. You don't have to learn in advance. I didn't.
Could someone please post the link to the Hive account or the Hive post?
Oh yeah, I got it.
Have it handy.
For my articles or like the
for the Hive.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Oh, Hive blog. Perfect. Thank you. Saturday, July. My God, I can't believe it's July already.
All right.
Hey, I'm gonna mute again. Oh, but I didn't hear the last thing you said, Eric.
I'm not sure if Eric was speaking.
You had said something and Eric answered you. It was kind of low.
I'm not sure what you're referring to, but just by the way, I did just send the Alien Worlds link in the chat. By the way.
I see.
Nice. Dan, that's a good idea to have some view of how people have been doing. I like your idea, or whatever Felix is doing, to like post a screenshot in the beginning of a meeting that kind of shows how people have been ranking over time. I guess one comment on that is in the future, it'll be more helpful to look at the contribution levels over time, like the 1 through 6, rather than the total respect, just because respect at some point will be tradable. So people will be able to just buy and sell respect. So like your total respect token balance will be not up. Yeah.
So do you mean contribution levels, like average ranking, like 1 through 6, or do you just mean like the total amount of respect earned as opposed to respect that is potentially purchased?
I guess those are actually derivable from each other. Actually, they're not derivable from each other. The best is the levels. So, yeah, the best way to tell how people have been doing over time is actually to look at the sum of their contribution levels over the past 12 weeks. And you might ask why 12, and I don't remember if that was a public thing yet or not, but we're in
You
the white
have-
paper.
You have to join a meeting at least once every 12 weeks.
Yeah, I think according to the white paper, people might not know that yet, but that's the current thinking anyway with how we've been looking at it. So, but that it's a sum of your levels over the last 12 weeks. So you just sum the last 12 weeks levels, and that's that person's like basically their. That's how you can relatively order people in terms of their contributions to the fractal.
I see Marco has hands up, so I suppose if you want to go first, Marco, then feel free. But there's something I'd like to say in response to James at some point.
Go ahead. Just let me know when I can unmute.
Okay, sure. I was so one. I guess I'm still curious about what exactly you mean. That's for the last 12 weeks. What specifically you're referring to? And then two, I feel like there might be like a bit of a misalignment in incentives because I feel like for somebody like me, I'm right now like right there with Gregory and behind Dan in the 2 spot in terms of total respect, and I appreciate that so much. I'm so grateful and honored. But then also I feel like there is good reason to rank like people who are new to the community higher, like to help maybe make a more a less Pareto kind of distribution, and also to encourage new people to join. But at the same time, I don't want to like rank myself too lowly and get like an average rank that's lowly, which decreases like governance rights. Like for example, if I rank 2 in every week, then that would give more opportunity for new people to join. But then if I did that for 12 weeks, then that would, I guess, with some governance, that would make my governance rights, or I don't know if it's governance rights the right way to phrase it, but that could have some negative effects in terms of how much I can interact with the system or something like that. So I don't know. Those are kind of just like some general and not very refined thoughts, but that's something I thought about before, that it might be helpful to realign that in some way to make it more easy for welcoming like new members with more respect, perhaps is a way to put it. But I don't know. I had just some thoughts.
Quick response, and then we can go to Marco. We only have a couple minutes left, but so to provide the further clarity you asked for, the first topic, 12 weeks is an important metric. That is the distinction between whether you're a full-time or part-time member, depending on the percentage of meetings you've attended over the last 12 weeks. And if you've attended 0 in the last 12 weeks, you're not even a part-time member. So the optimal way to relatively organize people in terms of their contributions to the fractal as judged by the community consensus is by the sum of the total levels of the contributions over the last 12 weeks. That's all I'm saying. And it's and it's actually better than the sum of respect earned through these consensus meetings. But I can't justify that to you. I can explain it to you later offline if you want to know more about why that is. Okay. And then your concerns are heard. One thing to keep in mind is that we don't want to have a particular end state in mind when we do mechanism design. So you're trying to create the means which justify themselves most correctly, as opposed to finding some end state like a particular distribution curve that you then try to make the mechanism fit that distribution curve. That's upside down. So we just want to have a consensus mechanism that's as simple and neutral as possible, that justifies itself as best as we can. And whatever the curve ends up looking like is whatever it looks like, and that is what it is. So
I can touch on that too.
Yeah, so there's that's what I would say to that. And if there's people who want to create a little distribution pool to give to new members as like a welcoming committee and whatever, that would be awesome and might be valued highly. And then that team, the welcome committee team, might get ranked even higher and whatever.
So like
layer 2 can do things like that, so we don't have to modify like the layer 1 mechanism. Okay. Go ahead, Marco.
So now that you got that out, and it's I had said a while back that when I see a ƒractally team member that's always ranking 6, just to now rank him 6 and then create a top man pool where we send it back in, just so the distribution isn't get um, bottlenecked into a network of people that don't know each other. It's a bit different from what you had said, but I still created the pool anyway because of that. But there's something that seems to be overlooked. When you rank 6, you move on to the next round. That should be an important consideration that someone who's never ranked 6 or someone that infrequently ranks at the top be considered. If you're going to attack a network, you're probably not going to care the total amount as much as how often it moves forward. So that's all.
Before we end up running back the next room, if there's anybody who wants to talk about a Metaversal podcast episode that you'd like me to help promote you and get it so you can even sell a shirt, feel free.
I'm interested. I'd like to know more if you got a link.
Yeah.
I'm at Westridge if you're on Telegram. So if you see my last name in there, it's the same for Telegram. That's a good way to get a hold of me. And the also thing is I'm working to turn this into a dissertation for a doctoral dissertation. So that's another reason I'm playing with this stuff, and maybe the property is
awesome.
Write up a real document, maybe a book, something, so that gets the word out with some proven things.
Didn't find you on Tele.
So I'm about 3 or 4 months between having to lock in what I'm doing. Anybody has any ideas?
Cool. Sounds
exciting.
Good. Yeah, very exciting. James said that, and last time the timer just ended like instantly. It was at the 60-second timer, so he's going to end it at in approximately 1 minute, but it might end at any moment. So I just wanted to say before it ends, one, thanks James and Marco for the interesting discussion and great points. Looking forward to discussing more at some point and learning more, of course. And then Eric, that sounds cool too, and I would love to work with you in some way with what you're working on in the podcast and stuff like that. So at some point, it'd be great to connect with you more. And then, yeah, thanks everybody again so much for the great meeting.
Dan, how do I reach you?
I'm at Dan Singjoy on Telegram or Twitter or Discord, and I'm also at Dogman Labs, whichever one you prefer.
Okay.
Thank you all for your links too. Very helpful.
And if you want that timer, just go to apps and Zoom, and you can find it and load it for yourself.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep.
Recording in progress.
All right, everyone. Thank you for showing up today. We're going to lots of interesting things to discuss based on my group. We had a little bit of extra time afterward and got to discuss some things about what kind of fractals there could be. But before we do that, I would like to play the video again where we demonstrate the prototype UI that we are building. As you're watching this, please be aware that there are one major piece of it that's not implemented yet, which is the indicator that everyone is in consensus. Now that should be done in the next week or so. Not committing because my devs won't let me commit to any particular time frame, but you'll get to see an idea and I can describe what that would be like. But this is a functional thing. The video is all directly peer-to-peer, completely decentralized, and it's working on a mobile interface as well as desktop. So without further ado, Jesse, can you cue the show?
All right.
Is it just
I'm just going to turn up my volume a little bit more than last time. Here we go.
All right, so guys, we have 6 minutes left to come to consensus on who has the best office. Am I stating that problem correctly here? Who has the best office?
Yeah.
Right?
Who's contributed the best background office experience to the other members of the group?
Yeah, this is really important, and I'm glad that we can talk about this. So, look, I just want to say that I really like my office. I have tons of natural light, and I do think that because of that, I deserve probably the rank 6 spot. Then again, I don't want. Look behind Gregory. First of all, look at Gregory and then look behind Gregory. I don't want him to come after me if I try. So I'm actually going to propose that Gregory's rank 6 because I'm afraid of him.
I have one concern is that his front-facing persona doesn't match his background.
Oh.
Joshua, when you're
Also,
doing
I
the
would say-
recovering
There's that
video
consistency there.
dialogues,
But yeah,
Oh, say that again.
your Zoom windows are creating blotches that are zooming out, so you got stuff on top of it. We can't see beneath what you're sharing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for mentioning that. All right. Let me just get rid of this.
Background is really what's important here. So I think like the glasses and the hat might actually be a distraction for what we're really trying to reach consensus on.
Oh, a little
Oh, so we
disrespect.
should get out of the way, is what we're saying?
all right. I have to say I really appreciate the medieval theme back there. So yeah, I'm all for Gregory being number 6, level 6 here, most valued background. That said, all things considered, Brandon's got a pretty good one. He's got a fireplace to create a little ambiance.
The statement of the mission was also who has contributed, right? This is contributions in the past, and I have spent hours and hours and hours and hours in the car getting other coworkers in my background for the last few weeks. So there is that.
Yeah.
I'm moving you up right now.
Yeah.
In my rank list, right?
So more of a.
Hey, that's your
tense.
5 minutes. That's your 5 minutes. Next.
Brandon does have kind of a fractal fireplace back there with those stones, the way that they're put together. I don't know if anybody's noticed that.
Nice.
Well, guys, look, we've got 3.5 minutes left. Obviously, pretty soon in this UI, we're going to have live indicators of the consensus that we're all coming to as we drag and drop. We don't have that here yet, so let's figure this out. All in favor of Gregory at rank 6?
I think Mike should be there.
All right. You know what? I'll agree with that. I will change my vote to Mike at rank
What?
6.
Wait! I didn't even get. No, here, I got a nice backyard too.
Oh, if we're talking backyards, I can take.
Mike's giving us more variety.
I can go out to the pool, guys.
All right. So, Mike, rank 6. All in favor? All right. Gregory, rank 5. Oh, well, sorry, Gregory. We've got 5 against you. But I will say I would throw Gregory's name out there for rank 5.
I'd agree with
I
that.
second that motion.
All right.
But how do I know what rank 6 is? Because there's no 6 on here.
It's the top. You see most valued contribution. Just slide it to the top.
Okay, but
yeah?
I'm just being a user. I don't know what.
Yeah. All right. So anybody for rank 4, you guys?
Dan's got a nice corporate look in the background, and I think he had like a logo or something back there. It is.
Oh yeah.
There
Big
it is.
back there.
Very thematic.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's cool.
But I'm gonna go with Brandon's ambiance with the fireplace back there. It's my background's a little plain most of the time. So
I'll take it.
all in favor of Brandon for level 3?
Agreed.
Awesome. Okay. So we've got Mike, Gregory, Brandon. I'll throw Dan's name out there for number 654 3 spot.
I'd like to advocate for myself. I have a nice chair that you can see. The other thing that I would argue is I have a standing desk, so my background is dynamic.
Ooh,
Wait a second.
Where did he go?
Guys, I'm getting nervous
it's
here.
It's highly competitive.
We've got 1 minute and 19 seconds left. I'm getting nervous. So where are we?
I think.
All right. Let's go ahead and make James next.
All right.
We're 3. James level 3.
Yeah, the monitor clenches it for me.
All right.
Dan level 2.
All right.
And Thomas Sorry, I do like the natural light, but
Hey, if you're not first, you're last.
okay.
And the
Let's
liquor
get
But
this
I'm
submitted.
one.
I'm going to go ahead and submit this here. Submit rank consensus. We've got yes, Mike Gregory. Yes, all good. And we've got a few indicators mocked out here, and so the report isn't actually out of consensus. That will come into consensus and confirm we're set. Thanks all. Good meeting. 30 seconds to spare. Good work.
We did it.
We did it.
All right. Oh.
I'm glad we did it in time. Whew.
Thanks, everybody.
That was super fun.
All right. I'd like to thank the team for getting that put together. And some people I saw in the chat were pointing out that we had a couple of terminology misuses, both verbally, we're still using the terms rank, and the text on the screen is still referring to rank instead of level. Yes, we need to get that caught up and to be consistent. That is a point of confusion. One of the things that we highlighted in the video was that we actually aren't referring to rank or level anywhere on the UI, and we're just going to use the visual location on the screen to indicate, you know, best is on top, least contributor on the least contribution at the bottom. So it's kind of a visual way that kind of eliminates the need to even think about numbers per se. You just, is so-and-so above or below the others. So Matt, you had a question.
Yeah, in the white paper, there's the consensus, but there's also the peer review. Is that a part of the UI, or is that coming imminently, or what are your thoughts on that?
So in the white paper, we talked about reviewing how the other peers, were they polite and consistent with whatever guidelines. That's not going to be part of the MVP. That will be handled. Like the white paper set a big vision, and we're trying to say, well, what's the minimal possible thing we can do? We've got lots of ideas about how to make it more cryptographically secure, more rigid, things to keep people on track for time. Like, hey, this person's talking for like half the time and not giving anyone else an opportunity. Our goal is to see how far we can get relying on subjective feedback, subjective accountability, and not trying to overly constrain people like they're cogs in a machine that has to do things a certain way. So, but yeah, there's that opportunity. There's also the opportunity to submit the consensus opinion, but report your opinion of what the ordering should have been, just in case anyone wants to know. And there's a lot of variety that we play with, but we're trying to go with the minimal possible thing that allows us to iterate and move forward.
Real quick, just a housekeeping thing. If anyone's having issues today posting their comment, a few of us were having issues, and what worked to resolve it was to log out and log back in. So if you are having that issue, just go ahead and give that a try. If anyone else has any questions or comments, go ahead and raise your hand and we'll call on you.
All right. So
go ahead, Dwayne.
Go ahead, Dwayne.
Happy birthday, Oscar.
Yeah, happy birthday, Oscar. Is he still here? Oh, he dropped off.
He dropped off.
Oh, it just dropped off.
Yeah, we'll share that video on, it's unlisted video on YouTube. So we'll make that, we want to make it available first for this group. And then we can expand it to others. We'll also, yeah, there'll be more videos in the weeks ahead as we round out some of the capabilities. Right.
Do you want me to share the link here in the chat, Dan, or do you want to post it somewhere, like embed it somewhere first?
You can, I want to think about it. So we'll probably just,
okay.
We'll probably tweet it through the ƒractally.
Good idea.
And you can follow us there. If you're not following us, please do. So let's talk about some of the concepts about fractals and the mission here. And I guess the other thing is, if you have any questions about the legal status of things, we can also continue that topic if there's questions. In the breakout group, people, we were talking about what type of fractals could potentially exist and what would make them different. And imagine that you had a comedy hour. And the way comedy hour works is anyone who's interested in telling jokes and sharing jokes comes in, and you have a meeting just like this. And now you can reach consensus on who had the best joke. Jokes are sometimes better with a live audience. And the end result is that the joke can be recorded and shared, and other people can repeat it, and you get to have fun and you get to do things with people. Why is something like that interesting? Well, you don't need 45 minutes to reach consensus on the best joke. Everyone can give their joke in 1 minute, and you could probably reach consensus in 5 to 10 minutes. So for 15 minutes at one particular time, you can have some fun, share some jokes that you've come up with, and earn some respect in that community. And I suspect you can have similar things for poetry hour or anything that involves real-time feedback, real-time collaboration with other people. And that's a type of social media that does not exist out there. There's all kinds of social media where you post and you asynchronously get likes and whatnot, but you don't get real-time interactive feedback with the community where you can make friends and actually talk to people. I think that type of fractal is something that can grow. You could, from a religious perspective, you could have a prayer request fractal. Hey, you need prayer, show up, and people of similar religious persuasion can join together and share what's going on, pray, and allocate respect or support to the person who needs it the most. So there's a variety of different types of fractals that can achieve different types of things, and the amount of time it takes to consensus does change. And Jesse, and I want to apologize to Joshua, I called him Jesse earlier. My bad. I was dealing with Jesse in my group. He asked the question: does the amount of time it takes to come to consensus vary based upon how different the type of thing that's being judged is? And I think we saw, like with the video, we reached consensus on whose office was the best in 5 minutes. And that was a very similar kind of thing. We all had, real-time feedback. That was much easier to reach consensus on. But when you have one person who's doing blockchain development, the other person doing marketing, another person doing stuff in space, and another person helping get a Russian community started, how do you do that quickly? You have to spend so much more time just trying to understand the differences and compare them and debate those values. So it does seem like the amount of time it takes to reach consensus varies with the type, with the variety of work that's being judged in one group. Yes, Jason.
Well, I heard you say debate, and we had a kind of a debate on debate in our room, and I wanted to share the result of that because I thought it was really valuable. One person was talking about arguing for someone's contribution, and in the way that they were intending to convince. Like, it was one person trying to convince the room that another person's contribution was better, so that we could figure out whose contribution was ranked 3 or 4, level 3 or 4. And I offered a different way of looking at that, which was the way I go into these is I want more information. I want to hear everything. So if somebody has a different opinion than me, I want to hear it. I want to hear everything they think about that, why they think why they think this person's contribution was more valuable than this person's contribution. And rather than a debate about it, I just want to get all the information and then have my own opinion. I don't want to convince anybody that my opinion's right. I don't want to convince anybody to change their opinion. I'm not really interested in people changing mine, but I want all the information out there. And when our room went through the consensus machination or whatever that is, I noticed that we were getting to the point where we had 4 people who agreed and then not listening to what the other 2 people had to say. And that occurred for me, like, there's a lot of information just being lost there. These 2 people have opinions that are different than everybody else's opinions. and they have some reason that that person's contribution occurred valuable to them, I want to hear that reason. So when it's a different perspective, I think that people could take into the room, more about information gathering and looking around for what's somebody else's opinion. And I want to hear that.
Yeah. So what's interesting is it might be faster to have 2 rounds that are 30 minutes with 3 people in each round than to have 1 round with 6 people. It's almost like you're dividing up. Let's take it to the extreme. You only have 2 people in a room. You have to reach consensus among yourself who made the bigger contribution, and it has to be unanimous. And then the winner of that goes to the next round, and you have to repeat, right? Kind of like a binary process. There's all these different variations that could be experimented with. And we're already pushing the boundaries, like when they study the number of people in a room that can facilitate a conversation, it's actually better when it's slightly smaller. 10 is too much, 3 to 4 is ideal, and we're at 5 to 6. So we're like right on the threshold of it switching from everyone feeling free to participate to somebody is leading the whole conversation. And it really depends on the mix of the people in the room. So Jesse was pointing out, we reached consensus in 30 minutes today. And the reason we were able to do that was because most of the people in the group made smaller contributions without much to say. And so it was not as hard. But other weeks I didn't have time, went all the way to the limit because everyone in the group had made such tremendous contributions. So that's a challenge there, which suggests, and I mentioned this last week, potentially having 2 rounds where we take the top 2 from one round and promote them to the next round and then repeat to get better filtering of what's going on. And so it's not as relevant whether you're 5 or 6, because that's going to be decided at the next round up, not this round, which really can eliminate some of the debate. It's like, is Mike's or Gregory's background better? We don't care. They're both going to the next level. Next, right? And that's probably a way of handling this. And in fact, we could,
Of course, today there'd be 0 contest. Gregory would knock it out of the park.
Yeah, I've got to say I've enjoyed his background today. So that gets with the spirit of having fun. You saw we were having fun in our video. Things like comedy hour. If someone wants to set up a time to actually try a comedy hour fractal, I would think that would be a fascinating experiment for people that have dad jokes and or other type of jokes that they want to give, but just having fun with it. And then we have mutual respect, right? So comedy hour might be something, but hey, that's a fractal that we can give mutual respect to the people that are having fun. Because I think people will come back for, wow, this is, every time I show up, I'm just laughing, and then I have jokes to share all week, and I get to meet new people, and it's just great. That is a lot better than, man, every time I show up, it's a political slugfest of me arguing for why I need to get the tokens because I did more for the community than everyone else, and right, that can be demoralizing. And comedy, even if you lose, you win because you enjoyed the time you spent sharing with other people. So, and that helps spread it. So that's just some ideas that I'd throw out there that we can consider. And as the tools get better, like the tools we demonstrated today, it'd be really easy to spin up these fractals and keep track of what's going on. Shakuz.
Yes, I do like to say at least, the new design. It's awesome. It's simple. It just works. And you rate people up and down. It's just a game, like a game. It's a sliding puzzle game, like sort of. It feels like it. I like it a lot. I would love maybe to have a hint. Like in a volume, you have this ascending or descending triangle that shows you the direction of importance. Like to understand that top is more value than bottom, because sometimes it's the other way. We maybe a little symbol, but otherwise it's just great. I want to use it so we can have more quicker consensus and questions to ask people, our peers, and to understand what's actually in their heads. That is going to be amazing. That's going to be interesting. Like today you said, like, who wants to propose a background? But we have so many great backgrounds today that it's hard to propose this time. It was easy a week ago. Now it's different. Now everyone notices, like, what is in the bag? Like, how do I look? Yeah, that's fun. But we don't have these buttons. If we had them right now, you would say, like, let's vote on it right away. Let's vote out. Let's find somebody. Let's find a quick consensus. Something that's not as in a breakout room, more like heavy important. But this is something like a quick poll, and I would anyway decide, like, whom am I gonna give my sponsored prize or something. But I wanna hear the audience. I wanna see, and if we introduce these tools, we're not just introducing we're introducing new UI to new type of communication, because this is a new type of communication and this is a new messenger, and in this new messenger you are giving respect. And when I'm pitching Ƒractally, I'm usually asking, do you want to earn respect? And people are like, do what? Earn respect. Yeah, I want to earn respect. Let's come together. Do it on Saturday. I earn respect. I mine it as a token by talking. I just appear and do some stuff and follow and press buttons, and I mine some tokens. That's fun. And in Russian language, happiness is счастье. It actually goes down to be part of. Being a part of something is being happy in Russian. Счастье means being part of, быть частью чего-то, means part of something. So we all want to be happy. We are pursuing happiness, and being on Saturday Ƒractally meetings is part of the process. It's just this thing that makes you happy because it makes you feel part of a greater community with greater goals. Thank you for the UI. Looking forward for new stuff.
Thank you. Jason.
This isn't a suggestion about the UI, but it's going to sound like one. So I wanted to preface this. I want your opinion about something, Dan. I want to see, like, how this not proposed but hypothetical change in the UI would impact the reaching of consensus and the value of that information. So if in a different UI for a different app, we put the number of people who agreed with your consensus, who agreed with your ordering in the right, like, not who people, not what, but like there's 6 people in the room and you put this person at the top of that list, and it just says 4 of 6. And that would mean that you and 3 other people had this opinion right now. And then as it moves, those other things move. I just want to know what you think of how that might influence the process or provide value.
Majority of the time, everyone's going to be slightly different. And the indicators that we are already planning to add will indicate whether or not you've gotten a threshold, or whether spot is contentious, or whether or not there's agreement, and whether or not you're in the agreement or not. So we're getting kind of in that direction where you have some indication of, are you in agreement, and everything will basically get green dots next to each level when you're in unanimous agreement, when you're with the consensus of the majority, and you'll get a green outline, which is not filled if everyone else is in agreement, but you're not on that particular one, right? And then if no one's in agreement, right, there is no consensus, then it's just, hey, there is no consensus. And that's really, at each level, you're getting that feedback. So we're
So what do you think the impact of that information is on people's listening to what's being said or on their impression of the conversation, of that information feedback, what do you think the impact is on people as they think about consensus?
Well, you won't see anything, what other people are doing. As you're moving stuff around, if you never move anything, you don't see what everyone else is doing. So you can basically say, hey, I'm not going to move anything until I've heard everyone. Or as you move things together, only if other people have also moved at the same time will you get any feedback. So it's not like you're getting an update real time of where everyone else is. Like nothing moves on your screen unless you move it. Is the way it works.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
All right, Jorge, you had a question. You took your hand down. All right, Dan Singjoy.
Okay, cool. Yep, sounds good. Thank you for the great discussion and meeting as always, of course. And then also thank you for the interface design and the really fun video as well. I also wanted to just add on a bit, I guess, with what Dan was saying before about the joke fractal. And I think that's a great idea. And I'd love to try that and participate and watch that. I think that has a lot of potential. It also inspired me to remember the video. There's a video on YouTube called 6 Musicians Rank Themselves by Talent. I shared it in the ƒractally Telegram group a couple months ago, and I'll just share it here in the chat again. If anybody hasn't seen that, I highly recommend it. There's also quite a few videos on YouTube of like people ranking, like 6 people ranking each other on like attractiveness and lots of different things like that that have a lot of views, like 5 million views, some of them, and like they're really popular in terms of people watching it. So I encourage people to watch those and check them out. And then the comedy fractal sounds awesome. And I would love to also do like songwriting fractal and music fractal and like juggling fractal or all sorts of fun things too. So yeah, I just want to throw that in there as far as all the fun fractal ideas. And then also thank you, Gregory, for all the cool and like amazing visuals too that you have in the background as well. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah. The challenge with all these different types of fractals is getting a critical mass of people. I think we're experiencing a certain phenomenon because we've had 30 to 40 people. We all kind of get to know each other. As you get to 1,000, you lose some of that big group, big family kind of feel. And so having a combination of a general forum like this, where you have a stage, and people can come up, get on stage, and maybe what you do is you earn respect in the breakout sessions, and you use your respects to pay to get on stage, and so forth. And then when you're on stage, you can there's all kinds of variations we can do here, but I think we've stumbled across a corner of the social media world that's given a type of interaction that's even bigger and more interesting than, say, the original just pure governance that was started as. James, you had a question.
Wanted to reiterate a technical point that you mentioned, Dan, and went over quickly, but people might have missed it. And it's that UI that you all saw was a fully decentralized user interface. So that wasn't using some central server to coordinate the interaction there, which is really, really cool. It's not like Zoom. This is decentralized. So if somebody drops out, it's fine. So they come back in and all the connections are peer-to-peer sharing that information with each other. So it's a new video streaming technology as well as a new user interface for our group. So just wanted to say that.
Yeah. Is that what the kids are calling Web 3 these days?
Something like that.
We're Web 6. We have 6 people at a time. Yeah. So Toby had some questions in my group about block production. And this is an area that we're going to need to get volunteers and or recruit people. So the council will reach 2/3 consensus on appointment of all block producers. And I'm thinking that our decentralization is driven by our governance model, because information will inherently centralize, and governance is the only thing that you can decentralize. Because if you have something like Bitcoin, it's being centralized in a few mining pools, Ethereum the same way. and all proof of stake systems tend to centralize according to Pareto principle into some kind of oligarchy. So decentralized governance is the most important thing that you can have for measuring decentralization, which means we don't need 21 block producers, which is just 21 times the cost of one, but we could probably do with 5 to 7 block producers would be able to provide sufficient redundancy and accountability while minimizing the cost overhead of the infrastructure for the community to operate. So the council will appoint them, which means they'd be stable jobs, if you will. And then they would get paid according to their total uptime. So they have incentive to collaborate together to make sure that there's good uptime. And so if even one of them goes down, they all get a pay cut. So those are some of the things that are on the roadmap for the block production side of this. And so if you're interested in running a server, that will be a thing to consider.
There's a question here, kind of looping the block production back into the pre-meeting discussion. How do we prepare to become block producers amongst a group of unincorporated nonprofit association?
Yeah. So basically you need to get known and you have the infrastructure and you just convince the council that you're able and willing to provide the services. And if you provide the services, then you'll earn the respect. And it's non-binding. It's not a contract. You're not hired and paid. It's like you're going to get this respect as long as you're providing the service. And if you violate whatever subjective criteria we have, then you lose respect. And that's the scope of it. And so say one of the things that producers will be expected to do is to host the API nodes. And that's something that EOS was unable to enforce, but we will be able to enforce it because the council will be able to subjectively determine this node is not providing the APIs that the apps need. You'll need to host the governance interface so that people can engage in the governance process. And that will decentralize the interface like Steam or Hive is decentralized with multiple front ends on the same blockchain. That will provide, so the role of a block producer is slightly bigger than just passively producing it. You're also providing that type of service for the community, and it will be enforced by our decentralized consensus governance process. Mr. Cruz.
Yes, my question regarding the block production. Well, first of all, I would like to volunteer to become a block producer. I wished I wanted to be on EOS, but it didn't work for me to be a block producer on EOS. I didn't have enough funds, and it wasn't possible. And my question is, how is it going to be different from block production on EOS? You've probably thought about this, and we'll be able to see.
Well, you're going to have uptime and have multiple servers and be able to have a good domain name to host things at. So, and you're going to be publicly known, and your compensation is not going to be based upon token weighted voting. The council, which is going to be comprised of up to the top 12 teams, is going to appoint you. So you have a more stable job, assuming you're doing your job, and no one else approaches the council and says, I can do better than someone who's up there. So it's going to be, it's open in that anyone can get there. We have weekly meetings. If you want to be a block producer, you can say, hey, I want to be a block producer, and you can get known, right? So that you don't have the campaigning problem that you would have with something like EOS. So you still have to campaign, but you're campaigning to things. And so if you're making contributions to the community, then yeah, being a block producer is probably the most observable contribution you can make because it's measurable. You can say, well, I'm running so many servers. I've got so much bandwidth I've used. This is my AWS bill. This is my, and you can say, this is my contribution in your weekly meetings. You can say, well, I've received this much for my block production. And I've gone above and beyond. And so it provides objective measures there. All this stuff is, of course, subject to change and evolution is what the community wants, because the community will be able to tweak the algorithms as by consensus.
My biggest question probably is this, like, what are the chances I will be top block producer on this new blockchain? Is there a chance,
80%.
as you said, like, and in general, is it going to be well, you just said that it's not talking about it.
Oh, it's one of those things. If you're here first and you're doing a good job, you're likely to keep the job. Right now,
I like that. Yeah. Okay.
You know, I don't think, you know, there is some incumbent advantage when it comes to block production, just because you've got trust and you've got respect. And one of the things that we will require to apply for a block production job is to post a certain amount of respect as a bond. So you've been here, you've been earning it, you've got a higher chance. Anyone else who hasn't been here, who wants to say, oh, new network, they're gonna have to buy respect in order to post a bond, in order to apply, and then they got to earn the trust. And so there's a lot more accountability in what we're doing compared to other blockchains, even though we're more decentralized from a governance perspective. Yes, Jorge?
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, I wanted to point out about the comment you did before, in which where in the case of a room where all contributions are good, it's really tough to reach consensus. And whoever happens to be in the top spot, if he goes to the next round, and then the difference between his received amount of respect and that person that didn't make it to the second round because he was on the second best spot will be really big. And
potentially he might still be 6 if he's at the bottom of his next group, but yes, it'll be likely more bigger.
Yes, and especially if he happens to go to the third round, then it will be a huge difference.
I think we're leaning toward not having a third round.
Okay, so what I'm trying to propose here is, well, especially if we are not having a third round, to consider sending the top 2 people to the second round, because the difference in contribution between the first and the third is not usually as controversial as between the top 2 spots. So that's my idea for you guys to consider. First of all, that, and on second place, I think if we only have 6 or 7 block producers, we will really have a tough time trying to show ourselves as decentralized to the outside crypto world. So I understand that we will incur in an overload cost, but what about something like adding 1 block producer for each, let's say, 1,000 people within the community, so that we have an increasing number of block producers according to the size of the community. Yeah, so I have those 2 comments to make.
All right. Well, there's two metrics that people look to for decentralization. One is producing the blocks, and the other is the number of full nodes. Anyone who's able to run a full node can say my contribution to the network is running a full node, and they can say this is how much I spent running a full node, and then you can get recognized for that contribution relative to everything else in the weekly meetings, which means there can be an unlimited number of full nodes, and the community will decide subjectively how much decentralization or what's the value of a full node relative to the other value people could be contributing for that same thing. And then that will allow us to price that, because decentralization is a public good, but there's also diminishing marginal utility. And there's some point at which the cost does not justify the additional nodes. That point is different for everyone. And so I do agree that there's probably, we should probably stop not talking about the number of producing nodes. We should talk about the number of full nodes, because that's what's actually secures the decentralization. Yes, Jorge?
Yeah, the thing is that when you see papers, articles in websites regarding EOS, they never mention the number of full nodes. They always mention the number of block producers. And EOS has been criticized a lot for only having 21. So if we reduce the number from 21 to 6 or 7,
you know, it's funny. The number of block producers on Bitcoin that control 51% of all blocks, 3. Ethereum, 2. But yes, wow. It's an unfair level of propaganda that people use against us, and people are going to say whatever they want forever. They're going to say it's centralized because you only have 12 teams, right? The council is only 12. You know, so there's.
So my whole point is that if we have if you have a community of 10,000 people, well, 10,000 is 10 times as big as 1,000. And if in 1,000 we have 6 block producers, why not increase the number of block producers according to the size of the community, so that within a community of 10,000 people, we can have 20, 30, even 50 block producers?
Well, when it comes to faster finality, there's extra overhead that grows n squared the number of producers. So 6 times 6 is 36. 50 times 50 is 2,500 or something like that, right? You can see how it grew substantially more than just the 6 to 50, right? And so there's some cost overheads associated with things that grow non-linearly as the number of block producers. Full nodes, not so much a problem, but block production and finality, yes. Also, the trust factor. How do you vet all the producers? Because producers have a job. And one of the things that producers will be able to do is report subjective data. CPU billing is subjective data, but also random number generation is subjective data. And what's transactions to include is subjective data. I think I would stand very strongly on the fact that the number of people participating in our governance process will be in orders of magnitude greater than any other blockchain. If you consider all the miners who are contributing to the mining pool as contributing, I'd say we've got 40 people here participating every week. 92 people in the Telegram chat. We're a really small community compared to, say, Bitcoin, but I think we've got more active participation in governance than most other chains when you get down to the nuts and bolts of who the influence a person has on the outcome of the governance. And that metric, I think we win hands down. It's an educational challenge, but at the end of the day, people don't care about decentralization. If people cared about decentralization, then they would pay for it. Instead, people care about what benefits do they get, and they will always sell out to the centralized service if it's cheaper, or if it's better, or if it's providing more things to them than the decentralized service, which is why decentralization is a public good and centralization is a private good. It's why open entry systems move towards centralization. Concentration in mining pools and critical infrastructure, economies of scale, and all those other things drive them that way. So it's a talking point, it's a propaganda talking point, and you're never going to win against people who are dogmatic zealots about a particular point. They don't care about the practical realities. So yes, they'll get some flack from people who measure a network by the number of people that are technically considered block producers. But if you measure the network by the number of people who are actively participating in the governance, I think we're going to win hands down. Furthermore, we're going to have fractals and fractals and fractals. We're going to have many chains. We're going to have chains of chains. And among all those chains, there's going to be an infinite number of block producers that are going to be able to collaborate. And so measured as an ecosystem of a fractal structure, I think you'll have far more people participating in providing nodes. They'll just be part of different fractals, but with mutual respect, linking them all together, which means we are, if you look at the web of interconnected fractals as one platform, kind of like, maybe viewing all sharded chains of the same thing as one bigger platform, they'd all have independent block producers. And so you'd be growing the total number of people participating. So I think we're going to win on the decentralization argument if you look at practical results.
How are you going then to protect the community from, let's say, a coercive force trying to affect those 6 people who are running 6 block producers?
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about the coercive force.
Yeah.
The blockchain's public. It's replicated everywhere. We are sovereign over our opinions. The council can swap out those people at any time. And because we had the ability to reach consensus over a Zoom call, if the network goes down and we need to pick new block producers, we have a way to do so in a way that would be largely acceptable and reliable and deemed fair that no other blockchain will have. We call an open Zoom call, we'd have everyone show up, boom, and then we reach consensus. Because the network is secured by the decentralization of the information. And it's really just a challenge of getting a critical mass of people to agree to the same interpretation of the data. And so if we need to swap out the block producers because their nodes got taken down, all right, well, what happens if the council gets taken down? Well, the next weekly meeting, we'll pick in a new council. The teams can change the team leaders. It's very fluid, far more fluid than any proof of work infrastructure, which has to physically move from one country to the other, which would be easily banned or blocked from export perspective. Yeah, Cruz?
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, since we're talking about the new blockchain, accounts, free accounts, account registration, is it going to be different?
All right. My intention for accounts is you'll be able to sign up someone by generating an invite link and sending them the link, and then they can just click the link and they've got an account. That said, account creation is a public good.
Free.
Everyone benefits from account creation, right? Because that's bringing new people in. If no one does it, we all suffer. We want it to be decentralized. And it needs to be, quote, free. So we are working on a system to subsidize, to basically give everybody a budget with which they can invite people by generating a link and sharing it. And it will be proportional to your contributions to the network. So it won't cost you anything, because if you can't spend the budget on anything but inviting people. So there's no effective cost, but it still prevents one person from spamming the network with infinite number of accounts. And it creates the basis for the referral system of tracking who invited whom for incentive purposes. So yes, what does it cost? It won't cost anything. It's just rate limited on who you can invite. And how easy is it? You go to the user interface, you'll say, create an invite. They'll give you a link, you hit copy, and you send them a text message with the invite, and then they sign up. That's going to be the process. It's decentralized. You don't need any server. You don't need to pay anyone. Now, someone could offer a service where you can pay me for an invite. You can pay to create an account at any time. So there can be those services. If you're like, well, who do I go get an invite from? All right, fine. You can just pay. But it will be free for anyone who's invited by someone who's already a member. And people will have financial incentive to invite people. And so you have Telegram chats, whatnot, and you can get an invite. If you think about it, Bitcoin is invite only, in the sense that you don't have an account publicly anywhere until someone actually sends you money. You can generate an address, but that doesn't mean you have an account. And Ethereum's the same way. And so effectively, under the hood, the way this will work is you'll create an account for them, you generate a private key and you'd be giving them the private key. So you won't be able to publish an invite link because the first person who grabs it grabs the private key and changes it. So, that's effectively what you're doing is you're generating a private key for them. And then when they pick their account name, they change the key. And that's the process that, obviously there's some tweaks and other things that will happen as we move along, but it should be as easy to get on board as, say, Gmail was when it was invite only, or any other invite only system out there. Free, but invite only.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. I'm really also excited about having on the chain information of who invited whom, which is the multi-level system. And if we have it on the chain, that means we can use it to pay out dividends, and we can stimulate, motivate people who invited other people to use the blockchain, even later on, almost like lifetime bonuses that you get when you onboarded somebody to this blockchain, and this somebody is doing something, doing transactions. And I know people who have hundreds of thousands of people in their networks, multi-level marketing people. And if they see this opportunity to make money on the chain with tokens, lifetime, on the blockchain, so that there is no company that could actually eliminate me from this network as a referral point node. And because it happens in this multi-level marketing world, people get terminated, but this is blockchain. This is more fair system of distribution, and it's all in the new money. So this is awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, keep in mind, you can still be terminated under the current system. We just have a more fair governance process in theory for doing that than some CEO deciding to.
Yeah, we have people that you can talk to and solve it in a human way.
Yep. Yep. Matt, you have a question?
Yeah, I wanted to chase that a little bit more. So let's talk about the coercive actor again and how the community keeps itself well governed. So as you pointed out, we're a group of 40-ish every week. And so we get to know one another's face and we get to develop friendships and so forth. But I want fractal governance. I want Ƒractally to scale to millions of people. So how, in your mind, I know this is all theoretical right now, but how do we accomplish that? So how do you, will the platform, do you have some AI that's running to make sure that there's 6 humans on the call that are unique, right? And they're not associated with, let's say I get a bad reputation, I want to do a reset, so I just create a new account and I show up and I hope nobody notices. How do we protect against that?
All right, so we have one blockchain, many fractals. Each fractal is limited in size to 7,000. We can limit it further if needed. And then we have democracies in the sense that each fractal would appoint representatives to higher level fractals for making, say, blockchain decisions in the future. So you want to keep the small town feel as much as possible at the lowest levels of this. Second, everyone has to appear on video. So you're not going to get one person showing up with 100 accounts. Now, how do we prevent if they come back? Well, whenever you join a fractal, right, it's one thing to create an account on the blockchain. You also have to be invited into a fractal. And so you can't just sign up and say, I want to be part of this fractal. Someone who's in the fractal has to invite you in. And if somebody invites someone who was previously kicked out back in, then they're likely the person who invited them back would be the one that would be kicked out as a second time. So there'd be consequences for circumventing the community consensus about who needed to be kicked out and re-inviting someone back in, right? So if we kick you out and your best friend invites you back, we're gonna say, hey, I know you guys are friends, but we all agreed he's not to be in and you just violated our agreement. You're out too. And that's the challenging thing, is maintaining the balance between open entry and holding people accountable to the consensus. And if you don't do that, then it devolves to you can't kick anyone out, and you get all this abuse, and then no one wants to stay in because all the abusers keep coming back. And so that's the fine line. But I think if you invite quality people, and you don't just invite them because of some multi-level marketing thing, get a bunch of people in, because the only way you make money with the invitations systems that we're designing is if the people who show up produce that they reliably show up and they're producing value. If they never produce value for the network, you don't get any value for inviting them. You don't get money just because they signed up. You don't get money just because they created an account. They actually have to come to the network, use the network, and be recognized by the Fractal in order to do so. And if they do all those things, then you make money. And each person's limited in the number of invites they get based upon their contribution to the network. So if you spend your invites on people who aren't productive or aren't using the network, then you're not going to be as effective. So we're having lots of safeguards in there against people just inviting millions of people for the sake of getting their stats up on the number of people they invited. So it should provide a better quality control there. Patrick.
Yeah, Dan, just a question. You said at the beginning of the year that you want to be a DAC of DACs. We had an interview together and you stated EOS could be a DAC of DACs. We are going to DACs and not DAOs. But I understand very well why ƒractally LLC is doing a DAO with Texas to be a non-profit and to protect us. That is okay. But when we will behave as a fractal, as a UNA, indeed, a fractal is a UNA into this model, can we still apply those 3 rules to be considered as a DAC? And
yes.
The 3 rules.
Yes, it would still be, by my definition of DAO and DAC, the UNA will meet the same definition.
Okay, how is it possible to respond to the second point, or for example, the first point, a transparent organization that leverages smart contracts?
All right, so for the sake of this, we need a dictionary, and part of the UNA agreement would be a definition of terms. I'm proposing that in the past, people have referred to as smart contracts. We call code blocks or something similar, in that they are not contracts, but they're just code, that they're not creating any legal obligation among the parties. But structurally, it's functionally the same. In the sense that people engaging in smart contracts typically don't want the law involved in interpreting or enforcing it. However, when they get hacked, what's the first thing they do? They go and sue people, right? And because, wait, we had a contract. It was a smart contract. Enforce the terms of the contract.
Yeah.
No, we're explicitly saying this block of code is not a contract, and even the intent of that code is not enforceable in courts.
Okay, for the second point, to reach a consensus on information that is obvious, I would say it's okay.
Yeah, we're still reaching consensus on information every single week.
Yeah, and is sovereign over its consensus state, has no secret and holds no external property.
Yeah, holding no property being any type of contractual right. And so the UNA would explicitly not hold any IP, no trade secrets, no trademarks, no patents, no copyright, and no physical property and no contractual rights to anyone of any kind other than this agreement, which is largely negative rights instead of positive rights. Negative rights.
So your intent is preserved.
Yeah. Yes, the intent.
Your and our intent.
Yes. Yeah. We're not changing anything.
I am in this for that.
Yeah.
Into this ƒractally, I am here for that, because if we are going through information, data, and knowledge, we turn information, data into knowledge. It's what we do here. So I am very happy if that doesn't do a treason of the intent, and the intent is preserved.
Yeah,
that's the beauty. So
Yeah,
thank you.
all, what we want to do is facilitate mankind to communicate with one another and give them tools to make sense of the world.
Okay.
And if we all use the same tools, we'll all look at it the same way, we'll all be in agreement, we can act in harmony.
Yeah.
But we're all free to choose whatever tools we want to use to interpret what's going on in the world.
Okay.
Sign messages just being a way of a person aiding the tools in understanding who said what.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you very much. And it's a Yeah Baby Day. Thank you.
Yeah. Jorge?
Yeah, thank you again. So I'm thinking about what you just said. Let me paraphrase what you just said. I'm trying to make up my mind here. So decentralized technologies, meaning blockchain technologies, appeared as a way to reach consensus. So because we have another, because with this fractal governance, we have another way to reach consensus, are you suggesting that we can somehow reduce our decentralization level in order to achieve faster finality? Is that like if we could?
Well, first of all, it's so we're not reducing the decentralization level. We're reducing the number of nodes. I think you have to be careful with our choice of words here because you've got a recursive definition where you've defined decentralization in terms of the number of nodes instead of in terms of its resiliency to control by centralized parties. And I think as a whole, we're more resilient to control by centralized parties and or government edicts than the other systems. So be careful with equating decentralization with a particular implementation or a habit of the broader ecosystem in defining it.
Okay, so let's suppose we have a fractal with 6 block producers, and the fractal happens to have somehow of external influence on those 6 block producers on Monday. Will that imply that we'll have a non-operative blockchain for 5 days until the next election, well, until the next meeting?
Well, I would contend that if, let's say the authorities came and they seized the domains of the top 3 mining pools, that it would take 3 or 4 days for the miners to figure out how to repoint their power. In the meantime, the network, Bitcoin network might fall to a couple blocks a day while people try to restructure and repoint things. So it's the resiliency is a matter of how much permanent downtime there can be. Keep in mind, from a certain perspective, Bitcoin is down for up to an hour at a time, sometimes when there's no blocks for an hour, and that's just normal operation that it's down for that period of time. Meanwhile, EOS can be down for a minute, and that means that all the block producers are offline for a little bit, but then it comes back on. So downtime is, I guess, relative. Banks go down every weekend for 48 hours. So the question is, what damage was done during the downtime, and what is the level of service that we're looking for both in normal operation and then in extraordinary circumstances? And you can say, well, in normal operation, we're really efficient. And in extraordinary circumstances, we can recover with minimal damage, just a little bit of, all right, even the power grid can go down across entire countries for hours or days at a time, right? And that's might seem even more critical to life than anything that we're doing on our blockchain. So I don't think the goal should be 0 downtime or even minimizing it to an hour. It needs to be, if something major happens, we can get it back up and life will go on. And governments can't do that. So all that said, assuming if they take all the block producers down, poof, they can't do anything, then we'd have to have and they stay down permanently. And the people who operate them are unable to, say, hand their key off to someone else to pick up, right? So they're like in prison, their servers are captured, they're incommunicator. All right, well, first of all, we'd want to, well, if everyone's in the fractals in the same jurisdiction, you might have a little bit of trouble because who's going to want to step up and be the next person to go to jail? And you'd have the same thing for Bitcoin mining or even EOS, proof of stake mining, from that perspective. But if there are block producers that are service providers, and they can be geographically distributed to different jurisdictions, all the fractals we can have more guarantee that we're not all going to be in China or all going to be in AWS because of the review of the council over that, and we can subsidize proper decentralization, both technologically, geographically, and politically. And so in doing so, I think that there's an opportunity for more resilience and practical decentralization. If you consider the fact that anyone who's using cloud infrastructure, either AWS, Microsoft, or Google, that's where the majority of cloud nodes tend to be. And we could probably have more decentralization than that because we'd be willing to subsidize it.
So in order to, well, I don't mean to be catastrophic. I'm just trying to examine the limit cases in order to have a whole picture of the system. So in order to avoid that extreme event, it will be good to have other block producers in different jurisdictions. And the probability of that occurring is increased by increasing the number of block producers. So would you agree with that?
Well, I would say that globally, while there might be 198 countries, I think that you'll find that they've got so many pacts and treaties and everything amongst them that you've got maybe 7 continents or 7 practical groups of countries, right? You've got the ones aligned with the United States, the ones aligned with Russia, the ones aligned with China, and maybe some African countries. And then you got the terrorist countries that no one wants to associate with, right? That's the number of actually independent regions out there. And I think we can get with 7 properly distributed ones. As long as even one is operational, we can have the council appoint new ones and things can go. It's only really catastrophic if, if they can take down a third of them. If we go from a Byzantine fault tolerant perspective, a third of them is enough to prevent reaching finality. And so, yeah, it's a variable. And as a community, we can say, well, how much is it going to cost us? Do we have enough people that want to do the job? And we'll just determine whether or not subjectively it's beneficial. And if the political environment's getting more testy, maybe we pay more for decentralization. And if it's looking more accepting of what we're doing, we can get less. And we can adapt to the changing political winds. But from the time the lawmakers pass a law to that, we can restructure and redistribute our nodes faster than the enforcement agencies can come after us. So we can continually adapt to the regulatory framework of what's going on. But I think what we're doing is nonprofit public goods, good for humanity type of things. I think, and if we make it fun and we get a lot of people on board, then that's your real defense, is public support more than anything else.
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, Dancing Greg?
Yeah, thank you for that. That's very fascinating, and I agree. Also, like the kind of the moral case for it, that we're doing something that's beneficial for everyone in the world, and it's also fun. That's an excellent way to also protect the community and so forth. I'd also like to give the opportunity to Andrew, if you'd like to jump in first directly to that, because I was going to ask a question related to the recent article about DAOs that Dan wrote. But if you'd like to talk about this subject first, then maybe that'd be helpful.
Sure. Yeah, I just have a quick question. Dan, you mentioned that's Larimer, full nodes versus block producers. There's like 6 to 8 block producers, and then any number of full nodes. What I'm curious about are those the equivalent of backup producers, or are there going to be backup producers? Is it sort of similar system requirements?
Any full node could be a producer if you chose to flip a switch, and they could be basically backup producers ready to engage at any time. and the backup nodes would be compensated by the subjective process here. Hey, I'm running a backup node. They're not getting paid per block. They're not getting paid by votes, but they can get paid just by virtue of the fact that we value the fact that this person is running a backup node that happens to be an API node. They can still provide API services and do other things for the community. So there's ways of getting compensated there without the Sybil attack problems you have on EOS, where people run multiple backup nodes to just collect the money, or they technically on the blockchain it looks like there's 10 backup nodes, but it's all running on one real node. We saw that problem with Steemit as well, where people would have multiple nodes so they could try to game that system. So there's a lot of value we're getting out of our decentralized governance that are going to allow us to do things no other blockchain can do.
That's cool. Thank you. It's very clarifying.
Yeah, Dan?
Cool, thank you. A couple things. One, I just remembered that the Eden on EOS election is next Saturday, I believe like an hour before this, and I remember last time we decided to push this meeting back or skip the meeting for the week, and for next week, are we planning to do this meeting as regularly scheduled, or will there be some sort of change because of the Eden election?
We're going to do this as regularly scheduled.
Okay, sounds good. And then I'm also wondering, and I know it's kind of late, so of course we don't have to get into it much if you want to go soon, but regarding the article that you wrote about DAOs, I very much appreciated it, and I'm still absorbing it, and I'm planning to read a lot more this week and read over it to understand it better. But I've been wondering the best ways to work with this legal definition and so forth, and like the best kind of, I guess, legal strategies going forward with both this fractal and then particularly the fractals with the Eden fractal and the Alien Worlds fractal and other fractals that people might start, especially before the actual full Ƒractally software is built. So with the Eden fractal, we've been kind of bootstrapping the growth and incentivizing the growth with EOS, like 100 EOS per week. And then Dwayne is also doing similar things with Crown, giving away some the Crown tokens and Alien Worlds tokens and NFTs and stuff like that. And it's really exciting and helpful to give out a little bit of tokens that people like appreciate beyond just the respect. But I'm also wondering like the best strategies going forward with DAOs, because as you said, like DAOs, there's difficulties or ways that it might not work with like owning property and stuff like that. And I also want to make sure that as we're doing these other fractals that we're keeping everybody as safe as possible and protecting the community as much as possible with how we're doing it. So I'm wondering, one, if just generally you have any opinions or advice that we should take into account.
So the biggest thing to pay attention to is like here, everyone participating, we've all signed the Fractal Contributor Agreement. And so a lot of the ideas that were in my classification of unincorporated nonprofit association, it's all very consistent. And I think we clearly fall under that even without updating the contract, we would. However, as I mentioned, like with Ethereum, 65% of those people consider it property. What percentage of the, say, Eden folks consider EOS to be property versus share our opinion of it as just being consensus information that's not owned by anyone? And it is the organization, say Eden, operating for profit. I think Eden's not operating for profit. It's trying to do public goods, and all the funds are being paid out not to the people that are managing it per se, but to the for the cause of EOS. And I would really say, well, what have people agreed to? And with Eden, people agreed to a constitution, which is very lightweight of using the fractal process for selecting leaders, and it didn't say hardly anything else. That's and then since then they've adopted additional bylaws and expanded. But I would look very carefully on has everyone agreed that this is not property? Has everyone agreed that the purpose is nonprofit? And are you managing funds that you're sovereign over or not? Here, we're completely sovereign over the state of our spreadsheet and the state of the blockchain we launch. On EOS, you're only partially sovereign. Now, EOS as a whole is completely sovereign. And so it's really, is the entire community on board, or is the community divided about the legal opinion about what's going on? And if the community is divided, then all the members have greater risk. And it might be worth forking to get everyone on the same page legally as far as nonprofit status and who's making the governing decisions and so forth. There is nothing that prevents an unincorporated nonprofit organization from owning property. Let me make that very clear. It can own real estate if it wants to. It can sign contracts. It can do all those things. It just has to maintain that it's for a nonprofit purpose. Now, if you've got tokens and you're distributing dividends, it starts to look like it's for profit purpose. Now, distributing tokens that aren't receiving dividends from the operations, or that might be just respect or whatnot, that's even potentially fine. I'm erring on the side of banning property because without property, you cannot make profit. Profit being defined as an increase in property. That is, and all these things only really matter in the event of a dispute. Someone wants to sue the organization. And so if you're dealing with a small group of people and there's not a lot of money involved, the total damages people could claim is relatively small and you're good. But of course, this is nothing I'm saying here should be interpreted as legal advice. There are practical realities, right? The practical reality is no one's going to sue you over $1,000 because it costs more than $1,000 just to have it brought before a judge. The more people you have, the more likely someone's going to be ridiculous and try to sue you over nothing, and they can sue you over nothing. So those are the things that you're just balancing out. I don't know if I answered your question or not.
Yes, that's very helpful, Dan. Super helpful. If you don't mind, I'd love to ask two quick follow-up questions. One is that we don't currently have with the Eden Fractal a Fractal contributor and Eden contributor agreement. And also, I think it might just be helpful to just make a distinction between Eden on EOS and Eden Fractal. So I think that they are two independent communities and two, Eden Fractal is a DAO, whereas Eden on EOS is more of a smart organization. And they're very aligned and many members associated. But I think that there is that distinction which is worthy to make. And for the Eden Fractal, James Smart, when he built the smart contract, he built in a place where we could sign the Fractal contributor agreement, but we haven't actually done that yet. So I think it's definitely a good idea that we do it based upon your recommendation. And so one, I'm wondering if it would be okay, or if you'd mind if we use copy and paste a good portion of the Fractal contributor agreement that you used, or if you think that we should craft it totally different.
My advice, if you could wait a week or two while we get version 2 of our contributor agreement out that specifically acknowledges UNA status, that would probably be good. It's going to have a large portion copy and paste from the current agreement, but it's going to be a little bit more focused and more generic than the current agreement. And in theory, you should be able to adopt it by just changing the purpose of the agreement, which is going to be stated at the top. We're working on that as our contribution to everyone who wants to do DAOs. The other thing to consider is that teams need to be explicitly accounted for, because in theory, a team is also an organization of people collaborating. And that if a team has a for-profit purpose, you might have a general partnership among your team members independent of the broader general partnership, unless you encompass the concept of teams within the broader agreement, that the team is just is a subcomponent. It's like a committee within an organization instead of a whole new organization on its own right.
Okay, sounds great. Thanks, Dan. And if it's okay for me to ask one more quick question. With the Eden election coming up next week, there are several people in the Eden Fractal who have been talking about trying to raise funding for helping the Eden Fractal in some way, potentially increasing the 100 EOS reward. There have been people who are talking about that, and so like you said before, it's not really feasible for people to do like a lawsuit when the community is small and there's only 100 EOS per week. But if we do raise more funding and more people are attracted, then that could become
My advice there is people can give anybody money, and as long as it's less than $15,000, there's even no tax reporting requirements. So you find someone you trust, give it to that person, and have that person distribute it. That's all just person-to-person giving, as long as you have agreements that this is a gift, and that there's no expectation of return or that the other party do anything. But yeah, you can have agreements, and it can even be, like I said, if it's small and it's not involving a lot of people and everything, and you know who you're. I'm not a lawyer. I can't tell you you're safe, but yeah, there's a lot bigger fish to fry. Let's just say that if you're outrunning the bear, you don't have to be the fastest runner. You just have to be faster than the slowest backpacker.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Dan. Just one really quick thing. Do you think it matters if that's on a multi-sig? Because we're currently forming a multi-sig for the Eden Fractal with 6 people. Do you think that that'd be fine as opposed to just one individual doing it?
It's the same thing. Okay. Now you have 6 people that have got a nonprofit association status doing something for the public good. That's no different than any other association. So I think you're clearly falling under this nonprofit association thing that limits your liability automatically, even without any written agreement whatsoever. So you just have to look out when you start making promises of return. Profit starts to become the common purpose of why you're coming together. That's when you have to get general partnership status and things expand. But operating at a small scale like that for giving people money for doing something for others, you can, the legal contracts that we're putting together are just layers of insurance and protection to eliminate disputes in the future, minimize the possibility that anyone can claim to misunderstand what was going on, or claim to have different expectations from other people. And if everyone's really clear about what's going on, then I don't think that you have a problem.
Absolutely.
But yes.
All right, thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.
I'm not a lawyer. Please don't take his legal advice. Please consult your own attorney.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Dan Sinjoy. Yeah, because I want to follow you with Eden Fractal because I have 2 type of question about Eden Fractal and then about BIOS. But first, Eden Fractal, to be clear, to speak the truth, there are some people into Eden Onios current iteration that are interested to see more data, metrics, proposals, information. So what we are doing here into Fractally Genesis, and we are trying to do at the other level into the Eden Fractal to make flourishing those ideas, those proposals, also in order not to say to merge, but to help Eden Onios current iteration with the chief delegates that are elected there through a fractal governance process that is very oriented political playoffs, because they are elected, we are electing leaders indeed. But those leaders, if they can interact with the rest of the community, and not only into their board member every week in 1 hour discussing, but take into account the rest of the community, thanks to the Eden Fractal, this circle, let's say, into the middle, that can help, that can do these collaborative circles.
I'm not sure I understand where you're going with the question, but...
What I want to say, Dan, is that many people into the Eden Onios currently are interested to go more fractally, to share more data and information and turn that into knowledge. So it's not just the Eden election with board members that are elected, but they are also interested to take into account our suggestion through, for example, the hidden fractal that can help for that. So that's for me, for this reason that I have joined Hidden Fractal and that I have give some funds for Hidden Fractal, because I know those people, Dance Enjoy and the other that are in, and we have an MSIG that's limited the risk also, because we have an MSIG on the smart contract. So that's very nice.
Yep.
Now for the second point, BIOS, I have a question. And I want to hear that from you, because since 2019, and already before, we heard about BIOS project in space with the beach chairs, and also EOS to have a raindrop onto EOS. And now we want to go to more decentralization. And we know that with decentralization, we have also to have other jurisdictions that are on Earth. We have to be in the space in a way. So I want to hear from you if you are, what you think exactly about the project BIOS, and if you are in favor of this project to help this project BIOS, or if it is totally something totally outside of
I've
ƒractally.
paid almost no attention to BIOS, so I can't offer any opinion on it. From what I do know of it, it migrated some people from BitShares to EOS-based code base. As far as the ƒractally in orbit, their team leader was in my group today, and I indicated my opinion that being in orbit is not particularly useful given the decentralized governance structure that we've got in place, and that it's going to largely be governed by where the ground station is and where the latency works against performance goals. So I was very direct with the team lead, and they pointed out to me that most of that in orbit aspect is actually being outsourced to another company that puts stuff in space. But what I see them doing now, and I think they're going to pivot based on my feedback, which I'm sharing with everyone here, is more toward just being a block producer on the ground and focus on that aspect of things. And if their name ƒractally in orbit is more aspirational, hey, we want to go to the moon, we want to, achieve greatness, versus more literally being in orbit. I think being in orbit only has value as far as satellites is if we all had hardware devices where we could directly talk to the satellite. If we had that, that might be valuable, but
yes,
we don't have that. And I don't think that's what they were proposing. So I don't value nodes in space from that perspective. I think we get all the practical decentralization we need by replicating the data to as many full nodes as possible here on the ground.
And maybe to add something to finish, IPFS. So to have more immutable data storage, something very immutable.
First of all, IPFS does not store data. IPFS is an addressing system that gives all files a unique name. And it's a protocol for maybe discovering nodes that might have the data. But it does not store data itself, because storing data costs money. That said, we plan full nodes would be expected to run some kind of IPFS pinning service for content that would then be compensated as a public good and or private good for the community. So yes, we're looking at IPFS as the addressing system to decentralize reference of the data, and it will be hosted. That data will be hosted by the block producers and or any other full nodes that choose to want to replicate it and ask for community consensus.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Actually, I'm going to go to Dwayne first because I haven't heard from him. Then I'll come back to you, Jorge.
All right.
Go ahead, Dwayne.
Yeah. Maybe I'll leave an answer until we see the new contributor agreement. So maybe it's just a comment that will really help out, our ƒractally or our fractal, and maybe my thoughts are to point them to the main system, because one of the intents is to get other people to join the Go ƒractally group, and then maybe something easy for these other fractals just to do the kind of the introduction. So just maybe a suggestion. And then the other two is just other thing is a comment as well. One thing we're doing from our community, because we're not really a DAC itself, because it is on the Wax blockchain, and we're trying to harness all the different communities that are already contributing to that alien worlds, and they've been able to branch out to different chains. For instance, Binance chain and all these Wax communities. These groups have unused assets that we wanted to signal from the group with no promise of any return, but to signal a group of support this Wax alien world fractal by staking some of those assets to later represent that we have some value over here that's not used, to maybe show some value of the token we build in the Go ƒractally system. So there's a lot there. I'm just going to leave that as the intent and legalities, and maybe something to come back to after we look at the next contributors agreement, and then see if that's too. Yeah, I'll just guess I'll leave it at that. I just playing with the dynamics of people utilizing their current tokens and NFTs over here to show that they have some value that can be measured on top of their participation, seem to resonate with the current gameplay and how people use those, assets. So they are assets with no promise of return, but it was some of the game mechanics we've been thinking about.
The danger of calling anything an asset is it might have, the asset itself might not have any value return, making it not a security, right? A commodity, an orange, not a problem. Now, as soon as you put a bunch of oranges into some other smart contract that's going to reallocate and distribute oranges for lemons, now that's very different. Now, if the orange and the lemons themselves are just opinions, not really the property of the smart contract, we're not an asset of the smart contract, then it, so when you compose assets, that's when you start getting contracts, and that's when things become a problem. And so the longer you can go, leaving things in the realm of not your property, merely consensus opinion, not an asset, not a legal right. Because if you say this thing's an asset and then someone takes it and gives someone else, either say the smart contract has a bug or whatnot, yep, that asset contractually belongs to someone, even if it's just an asset. And that's when you get into liability. That's when the smart contract managing the allocation of that can get in trouble, because a bug that misaligns it or accidentally deletes it, you destroyed somebody's asset, right? And so there's actually a contract among all the parties interacting with it to recognize a particular outcome. And if there's a bug, you need to fix it, and somebody's to blame. But if it's a opinion that, well, all right, we're all running the wrong code, run new code, or, you don't like the code that other people are running, too tough luck, because it's not your asset. And so that's why it's, it's not just about the assets, it's about composing things together of other opinions, and making sure that people don't act or believe that they have something, and if they cease to have it, legal ownership changed. So if something has a legal owner and you're managing it in any way, even through a smart contract, that's when things start to get increasingly dicey. Jorge.
Hey, thanks. I wanted to tell the community, everyone in here, that, well, I had many questions before coming to this meeting today, and now I have tenfold more questions. What do I mean by this? there is like a movie in the mind of every person, for example, who buys Bitcoin, and that movie is very clear. The number of well, the inflation of Bitcoin is going to be halved every 4 years, and this is going to happen. I don't see that movie at all in my mind in this whole ecosystem. I think the ecosystem, the whole protocol is fascinating, but I don't see what will be his time evolution 10 years from now at all. And I am having this like cloudness, maybe is the word in my mind. So the point is that I am proposing myself as a candidate. I like to simulate this whole protocol, both Eden and ƒractally, for the Eden fractal election, for the Eden election. So I'll propose I'll run myself as a candidate, and because many people here are both members of Eden and ƒractally, I wanted everybody to know that. The goal I'll have, I'm not planning to go all the way to chief delegate. I just intend to get some funding to try to clarify that movie, both in my mind, because that will be my pleasure, and in the mind of the community. So fixing some parameters or assigning some probabilities to each parameter, try to model the whole system to see how it will evolve in time, like try to see that movie that I don't have right now for everyone in here. So I wanted to comment that.
I understand the fuzziness thing. I think the biggest challenge is predicting the future of anything, even Bitcoin. How would someone have modeled the price of Bitcoin into the future at the start? The regulatory environment and all the different things that adapted and have changed, the existence of mining pools, all those things. That the story of Bitcoin is very clear and concise because it's been just repeated over and over and over, regardless of truth, regardless of accuracy. There's a simplified story. Bitcoin is money, fixed supply, digital gold. And that story people just buy without analyzing anything. And some of what we're doing here is we're looking at how the sausage is made, right? And I dive in really deep, and I'm calling things what they are. And at the end of the day, everything's just made out of atoms, right? You know, and if you go even deeper, no, it's all just energy. Atoms don't even exist. And it can look very, very fuzzy if you start to look too close at anything. You know, there's more space between you than actual presence, right? You're nothing. And the more we dive into these concepts, it's very easy for the concepts to seem blurry and for the narrative to be unclear. And for the masses who don't have the time to like understand the nuances, that's a scary, scary proposition. And one of the dangers of developing in the open is that people start to explore these different things and then they communicate it, and it can scare people away because they don't understand it, because it seems too complicated. When a simple bedtime story explanation of what's going on, you know, there is a God. Okay. That's just God says, okay, I can follow what God says. I don't need to understand why God says that. I'll just follow it. That type of thing works for most people. It works for marketing, and we need to get there. But when you're trying to design and engineer and build and experiment, you need to understand all the nuts and bolts, and then trust, I guess, a little bit in the emergent behavior, which I think is, does the process seem fair, regardless of the outcome? And then just trust that process and see where it goes. And if people buy into the process rather than buying into the outcome, then that's a little bit easier to understand. The process is relatively concrete. Whether the process will produce a particular outcome, a little bit more ambiguous. And just like the early days in Bitcoin, hey, everyone can mine, but these coins are worthless. Why am I going to do it? People forget, when for the first several years Bitcoin existed, people couldn't even articulate what it was. They had no way to even reason about the economic reality of it. And when I published in 2013 the article comparing Bitcoin to a company, a DAC, and saying that it was overpaying for security because inflating tokens to pay for mining was an expense of the virtual business. We didn't even have that model to even think about Bitcoin in those terms, because, you know, people are saying, is it money or what is money? And people were really, really confused for the first several years. And that's where we are, with ƒractally, this new governance model. Well, what is it really? What is it that we're achieving? Proof of work, tokens, associations. And so that's, we will come in and figure out the story and the narrative that is really simple to explain to most people. Most people, they don't try to explain the rules to a game, they won't get it. Sit down and show them how a game is played, they'll observe other people playing it, they'll pick it up and they'll be able to play. We're figuring out the rules of the game right now. We're experimenting with the rules, and we're trying to explain the rules to people. And that's the hardest part of any group of people learning a new game. Even if you're really, really smart, learning a new game can be challenging if the only thing you have to go by is the rule book. And that's, I think that's where we are right now, is we're writing the rule book, which is even more challenging than having a rule book, and trying to see how it all fits together and having an intuition about which way things are going to go. But based on how these weekly meetings have been going, I've got a really strong sense that we're onto something. Seeing fractals spawn up for other things and the fun people are having gives me hope that, well, we might be 40 people now, 90 people if you count anyone who's ever attended. As the software automates, as the tokens get real, as it starts to have value, people start to see the signals that cause them to want to participate, and then it'll go viral. But we're just really, really early. So that's my 2 cents.
Great.
All right. Well, thank you. Oh, looks like we got one more. Let's make it kind of quick, just so we're respecting everyone's time here, Cruz.
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you to the whole team ƒractally for showing the UI. This is the moment we saw it. It works. Somebody participated in testing it, so it's real. I can confirm, and I love it. And thank you all. Thank you. It was a great Saturday night today again. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you all for showing up and all the stuff you're doing and for helping us test it and all the feedback you're providing. You are true pioneers in the space. So thank you for making the world a better place.
And congratulations to the team again for the UI. Great.
Yeah, I can't wait till you start using it every single week. So
oh, it's going to be exciting. Well, thank you everybody for being here, and that's going to conclude the meeting for today. We'll see you next week. Looking forward to hanging out again next week.
Good to see everyone.
The most serious and joke circle that we have on EOS, around EOS, it's ƒractally. Yeah.
And don't forget about a suggestion to start the joke down.
Yeah, baby.
Adios.
Recording